All right, welcome to everyone. Welcome to everyone to this November meeting of the Board of Education for Loveland. We'll call this meeting to order at 6:01 PM. Can I have a roll call, please?
Reverend Eilert.
Here.
Mrs. Jarenick.
Here.
Mrs. Mangan.
Here.
Dr. Swetchenow. Mrs. Washburn.
Here.
Dr. Swetchenow will be joining us in a few minutes. He's caught in traffic. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I invite you to stand and join. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Board agenda was posted on board docs at the end of last week. We should have that before them. Do I have a motion to accept the board agenda as presented?
So moved. And second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Jarenick.
Yes.
Mrs. Mangan.
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Reverend Eilert.
Yes, thank you. Then moving on to the minutes from our last meeting. Minutes from the October 22nd meeting to approve. Any additions, corrections to the minutes? I have a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
roll call, please.
Mrs. Mangan.
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Reverend Eilert.
Yes,
Mrs. Jarenick.
Yes.
thank you. All right. Opportunity to welcome guests for today. We've got quite a few guests with us. We're thrilled to have members of Tigers Inc. and the Green Team, along with Mr. Mernan and Mrs. Ancada, who lead those great programs at the school. A number of other administrators here with us as well. Mr. Goldie's here from talking about our community cat team
Yeah.
again. Dr. Lorenz is here and she'll be talking about Live Oaks when we get to that portion of the meeting. So grateful to have everyone here tonight. Hearing of the public, I don't believe we had anyone sign up for that. Is that correct?
We do not have any.
Okay. Excellent. So let's move on then. We have a presentation on the LHS outdoor learning space.
Good evening, Superintendent Broadwater, Board of Education, students. Thank you for allowing me to speak and the team behind me to share with you our project of our outdoor classroom space and our vision for a larger space outside of Loveland High School, as well as our request for approval of the naming of this space. There's lots of things that excite me as a principal about this project, but one of the greatest things I think that's coming from this is the vision, the planning, the drive behind this project has come from our students. This has been led by them. It's been driven by them. And how can you not jump on the bandwagon and be excited about something that they have put together, that they feel the value in, not only for themselves, but all other students that come after them. And so tonight they're going to present to you what this outdoor classroom looks like in the space and what has went into the preparation and thought behind this. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to the collaboration of our between our Green Team and our Tigers Inc.
Hi, I'm Sophia Limis.
I am Brennan Waple. Elijah Rand. I'm Charlie Hammer.
So about a year ago, we came up with the idea of an outdoor classroom because we saw this open space that was kind of unused and we were like, oh, why not utilize it for something? The outdoor classroom came about because we wanted a connection to nature with the students, and just being outside in a calm environment will create a better mental health for the students. This area is also very adaptable. You can be used for different things, not just a classroom. This is also a lot bigger than just a classroom itself.
Personally, this project is very important to me. I had Mr. Kenyon as my math teacher year that he passed away. And Math was, that year was always an excitement for me going into his classroom. So personally, it's really important to me. We met with the family. We met wife, his daughter, and his brother on Friday. We presented them with the idea. We presented them with the designs of the outdoor classroom. The family was very supportive, very open to it and excited. And our main proposal to you guys is for the naming rights to use Steve Kenyon Outdoor Classroom on the space.
So we've had the honor to actually move forward with this project over the past few months. We've had donations from the Broadwater family and Creative Pavers. They've donated time and services and the actual pavers to put in the patio that is currently there. We met with the furniture company Tonic. They gave us a quote for potential outdoor furniture that's sustainable, flexible, and sturdy. We met with Loveland School Architects. They helped us really imagine what the space is going to look like. And then Elijah will touch on this in a second, but we met with architect Paul Shirley from Pelican Studios. He created and donated the mock-up that you're going to see shortly.
All right, and then next up, you can see on the left side of your screen is the view of the space as of now. You also see that in your handout that we gave to you guys. And so that's the space with the patio put in. And then on the right side is kind of our where we want to go with this project. And so you can kind of see like our final view. And I want to personally thank Paul Shirley for his time that he put in and his vision that he put in and donating that to us on behalf of the project. So then next up we have kind of the walk-in in the main entrance is a memorial for all the people that maybe their lives maybe ended too soon, that we can have like a memorial for them. And so we met with Stoltz Memorial, who made the Mason Memorial that stands out front of their high school. That's a M. So we would trying to mock that with basically the L for our logo. They gave us a rough estimate of that, and then that will be sitting on top of a plaza entrance that is accessible for ADA for both sides to be able to still get in there with wheelchairs, but then also have stairs up on the front for regular classroom and regular use.
So this wall will be used for plants and planters just to kind of be dedicated to those who have passed too soon in the Loveland school districts. They will have plaques on the front of the planters with the dedication. They are able to hook onto the wall, so they can be replaced with something during the winter and then taken care of inside. Green team will be responsible for taking care of the plants and making sure they're healthy and watered throughout all other seasons. And this is kind of just to add more greenery to the space, make it more lively, but also have a place for the celebration of life.
Next, we have the front wall, which will be the wall that you will walk into and see when you walk into the classroom. The title of the wall brings honor and respect to Steve Kenyon and what he has done for the school, touching many lives of students and teachers. We also have a wooden wall that is covering up the AC unit. The wooden wall not only makes the wall look more, just makes it look better, and also covers the AC unit, was just unsafe to be laying out there. We're also going to cover the windows back there, so no students in the classroom will get distracted by people walking through the hallways. We also have a hidden retractable projector screen, so teachers and instructors can project Google Docs, Google Slides, movies, and other things like that. And we also have lighting to highlight the name of the classroom, Steve Kenyon Outdoor Classroom.
And we have one more wall in this classroom, and we wanted to bring some sort of nature and art aspect. So what better way to do that than with some murals? So we have these murals. There's 2 vents on the walls. These will be evenly spaced between them. They're actually replaceable, so you can switch out the murals with different plants based on the season, or you can put up a mural of some sort of tiger pride if there's some sort of event going on. And then it also has a wood background just to create the uniform classroom.
This is what we envisioned for our dedication and benefactor ball. That's just a rough mock-up. Anybody who knew Mr. Kenyon knew he loved baseball. So our idea here is to have levels of donation, whether it's grand slam, home run, triple, double, single, just the varying amounts of donations, money, time, services that people are helping us with. And we want everybody that's a part of this to be recognized on this wall. And then moving into furniture, on the left, we have these bench table conversions. They're extremely accessible. Students with wheelchairs will be able to pull around to the backside that doesn't have the bench on it. They're long lasting. And then on the right, we have our tonic furniture that we touched on earlier. These can be ballasted, so it's safer for students. They can't fall down. They won't bend out. They won't flip over. They're made out of all recycled materials, and they're also long lasting. So the furniture we put in here will be able to stay in here, and we won't need to buy new furniture for a long time in the future.
So this is a minute long, but it kind of walks you through kind of like you're in space, but it's in the 18th. That's the gist of the video.
All right, so now how are we going to make this happen? So you'll see up there right now the timeline and our fundraising plan to accomplish this. And I think the best word to use to describe this timeline is ambitious. You'll see that our plan is to have a dedication in the spring with this space that you just saw to be completely finished. I'm confident, based on the people behind me and the work that's already been done and the connections we've made already, that this can happen. Personally, I had the opportunity 4 years ago to be part of a similar project, creating some outdoor space, multiple spaces at a school. And we were able to raise $150,000 in about 6 weeks. And that's because the importance of the space and the use of the space and how it benefited the learning for students, giving them an opportunity to get outside the walls of a school to learn and do other things. There was lots of value in that. And so I really am. I'm confident that we're going to get this done. This piece, the classroom, is what I would call the heart, the focal point, the main part of this project. But we wanted to envision that whole space. And so we have looked at other spaces outside of that classroom space in the green that's around the school there, and looked and tried to envision on what we could do with that space and how we could use that to benefit our students. And so some of the points, I want to make, and just to give you an idea of what our thoughts are, as you see the spaces with numbers, if you look at starting with number 2, the hope is that would become a pollinator garden. The number 3 is a seating area and a manicured garden right there. 4 is the steps and sort of the main entrance that would take you to the classroom, and to really make that much better than what we have now, and make it more attractive and draw people's attention to get to that spot. Number 5 is some managed park space. If you just look, you're driving into Loveland and look to your right as you go past the school there at that entrance, it looks like a park there with all the trees and the grass. And so taking advantage of that and creating spaces with benches and other tables where our students could go, they could read. A teacher could take a classroom out there in that space and spread out and do some things. I think would be very advantageous. Number 6 is a pergola walkway right along the building there that would have shaded seating and a covered walkway. And then number 7, which is right in the center of those trees, would be an amphitheater in which we could seat roughly 40 students on a tiered level that, again, a teacher could bring a whole entire class to that space. So those are different phases of this plan. But our goal is to have all this space completed and dedicated for the use of our students. I think one of the things that I really want to point out about this space too is the multiple purpose for it. I mean, this is going to be a space, the classroom itself and the space around it is going to be a place for healing. It's going to be a place for remembrance. It's going to be a place of inspiration. It's going to be a place of learning. So many different elements that can come from a space if we do it right, and we will. That will benefit not only our students, but our community. On any given Saturday, there's something going on right across there at the park with soccer and stuff. And you're always seeing people congregate, sitting on the grass or sitting in those areas. This would be space for them as well to enjoy. That's our plan. And I truly appreciate your time in listening to our proposal. And again, considering giving us the ability to name the space because, again, the benefits are pretty enormous on what we can do. I do want to give special thanks to the Kenyon family, not only for listening to our idea, but supporting the plan and I guess putting their trust in us that we're going to create a space that is worthy of having Steve's name on it. So we're excited about that opportunity. Again, I wanted to also reiterate our thanks to Mr. Shirley and Pelican Studios for his time he's already put into creating that vision. It's easy for us to talk about what it's going to look like, but to see it is a game changer. So we appreciate his time and in allowing us to do that. So at this time, if anybody has any questions, we're here to try our best to answer them, but that concludes our presentation.
Questions from the board?
Well, I want to say thank you. It's extremely well thought out, and I really love the partnership between the Green Team and Tigers Inc. and the community. So thank you for Pelican Studios as well. It's great to see, and I think it's also great to see not only you guys, all of you working together, but it's also fun to see your presentation skills. So I like that's part of it. But so your fundraising, what's the cost of phase 1? And how, and how can we support you with that?
Sure. So I think that's our next step.
Okay.
Final cost, we've already got some
Okay.
feelers out there. Guys, you jump in at any time.
Right.
So to finalize that cost, finalize the plan, and then we would go out there and I would do some soft funding, which is really focusing on foundations, grants, corporations and stuff.
Yeah.
That this would be an appealing project to them to be able to do. And then from there, we would go to the public fundraising where we would put something out to anybody that would like to give, our parent community, our community of Loveland itself, our staff, giving anybody the opportunity that would want to give. And then from that point on, that's when the work begins. And, and I truly think there's going to be a lot of people that may not give money, but they're going to be willing to do the work.
Right.
Or
Right.
they may have a product that we can use that will get a cost. Or they'll donate labor. I think there's lots of things that we'll be able to get from many of those individuals to lower that cash itself.
Yeah. Well, I think it follows our desire to diversify our funding as well. And I think, doing this is fantastic to be a amazing memory for Mr. Kenyon, as well as for current students and future students to maximize the space and our learning atmospheres at high school. So I think it's tremendous. So just a big thank you to everybody involved.
Other questions, comments from the board?
I'll comment. I think this is a fantastic idea and I love that there's student involvement in it. And I think what I would like to see is both of these teams, whoever's been involved in the development process and learning through how this all works, should be recognized somewhere with a plaque somewhere within there as well. But it'd be neat to see, like Lynn was saying, in regards to the supports that people will give, they'll be out there putting the pavers in, having student involvement with that too for their career pathways. If there's whatever their interest is, bring in those students to be of assistance too, and maybe earn some community service hours or ways to work toward apprenticeship or a pathway for careers.
Talk about the learning that can happen in the space, but the learning that's going on right now.
The development,
from
yeah.
Skills that they're developing in the process itself, are going to be things that they can
Oh, for
take
sure.
with them the rest of their life in any career or any venture they go to.
Just to jump in from the district, first of all, I always hear students may not have the best social skills. I don't know what's going on in other districts, but we are pretty good. You guys did a great job of presenting, even with a boot on your foot. You did pretty well there, Brock. So, but I appreciate it. I love that Steve's memory is a part of it. I think that's awesome. If there's something we can do from the district standpoint, Mr. Setters, with communication and so forth, just let us know. Thanks to Dave Spencer, Craig Murnan, and Tanya Nakata for providing the leadership such that these kids can be leaders. And I appreciate it very much. This is an awesome project.
I think you guys did a fantastic job presenting. It's a great design. It's really impressive. Was there any talk of like a potential garage door, any things that can be used year round? Or Mr. Spencer, you said you were in a former district where there was one. Is it still used year round when it's
Well, depends on the weather.
cold? And I mean, I know.
Yeah, I don't think there's any talk of a garage door space. Surely probably could talk about, that and how that could probably change the space. But for whatever weeks we're not able to use it, I believe it was far made up by
Oh, I agree.
every day that people could be out there.
Yeah.
Previously, we had to have a sign up sheet for each people sign up that space. That would book every single day. So that people can sign up there anyway. More books that are- We do have other things too. We do have some cameras already out there that are covering that parking lot, sidewalk, space itself. Support, especially if we're at kids outside, to ensure the space is safe as well.
That was my next question because of safety and security as well as vandalism. Having the screen and nice stuff, but we have it all covered.
Sure, there's gonna be things we learn as we go along. What-
Yeah, very impressive.
All right. That's it. Thank you so much. We really appreciate Mr. Spencer and all your students.
Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda are administrator reports. And are we gonna hear something from the middle school at this point, or is that coming late? Okay, great. And you should have all of those reports in board docs. And any questions, comments on those from the board? And moving on to the board president report. Want to begin, one of the things we've been doing is I've been reading our Great Oaks report from Dr. Lorenz when Dr. Lorenz is here tonight. So invite her to come forward to the microphone now to give that report, and then also just give you all an update on where we are, and we'll have some future action relative to our representation with Great Oaks moving forward.
Thanks, Reverend Eilert. I didn't want to overstep the previous presentation, but I was around for a while, and I do remember when that space harbored some geese, some nesting geese. And in fact, a Loveland staff member was attacked by a goose out there and broke her arm. So I think this will be I won't drop any names, but I do know that that happened. So this will be a much better use of the space, I think.
Silly goose.
But for my Great Oaks report, I will report that at the November 13th meeting, the Great Oaks Board of Directors approved the current 5-year forecast and the 2026 tax budget. They recognized the Live Oaks ROTC Female All-Service Division winners of the National Championship in the Army Raider Challenge. This is the second year that a group of ROTC students from Live Oaks have won this national championship. And so all of these students, both last year and this year, are students who have received 4-year full ride scholarships to the college or university of their choice that has an ROTC program. So it's a fantastic program that they have. It's a fantastic benefit to the students. They have noticed parents who have broken into tears when they found this out, you know, not just that their students won this event, but that they got that kind of scholarship as well. Also recognized at that meeting was Brian Karma. He's a Loveland student at Live Oaks, and he was recognized for his job placement at McCluskey Chevrolet. We received a careers booklet, so I'm leaving this with Mrs. Jaranek. But if you go to the Great Oaks website, all of the programs that will be offered next year are well documented, and they also include student-created videos of what a program has meant to a particular student. So they're really pretty impressive if you're interested in seeing what kinds of things are available. Great Oaks is getting some new programs in not lithium batteries, but electric battery kinds of creation. They have a great drone program. So there's all kinds of things that you might not know that go on at Great Oaks that are now going on. The last thing that I wanted to say, I've had the privilege for, I think it was 25 of the years that I served on the Loveland board. I also served as the Great Oaks representative. And this past year, the board was kind enough to allow me to finish the second year of a 3-year term that I had. And so I'm finishing up that term this year, and I understand that the board has a Loveland board member who's ready to step into that role. So I have sent in my letter of resignation. So the end of December will be my end of board work as far as school boards are concerned. I did spend 9 to 3 today on a Zoom meeting for the board of the Ohio Council of Higher Education Retirees. So I'm not without meetings to go to, but I will be resigning the end of the year. So I have sent that letter in. So you have that on file. And that's my report. I will send a December report. We'll still have a December meeting and I'll send that.
Well, thank you, Dr.
Thank
Lorenz,
you.
for that report and for your long-term service. Also just for being a team player and figuring out how our board is represented at Great Oaks. Listening at the OSBA conference, sounds like that can be a point of some consternation among some boards when the terms don't overlap, but you always have looked at this as a team effort. And since we have Mrs. Jaranek, who's eager and willing to serve in that role, that's a member of the board. And I think your report that you just gave indicates why it's helpful to have a sitting board member there, because all I can do are read the things that you send me,
Right.
and you can give a lot more color and explanation as to the great things that are happening there. So thank you again for your.
Maybe I shouldn't say this, maybe you'll all be jealous, but being on the Great Oaks board gets a few perks as well. So, you know, I remember the first Great Oaks meeting that I went to, a Loveland board member took me there to introduce me to the thing. And the first thing, or one of the things that they did on the agenda was buy an airplane. And I thought, yeah, this is really cool. This is a Board of Education that buys an airplane. So it really is a great board to belong to. So
Excellent.
thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And there will be, again, some future action that comes up in our agenda to formalize that change in leadership. One other thing that I want to talk about is currently we do not have a meeting scheduled for the month of December, but we want to add a meeting in the month of December so that we can do a bit of planning. talking to board members, it sounds like, and to administrators, sounds like Wednesday, the 11th will be the date that works for that. So it'll be a work session in the board office, in the conference room, time to do some evaluation, self-evaluation on this last year, and then beginning to look ahead to the next year. I think we'll have one piece of business in looking at Stacy, right, you're gonna bring course descriptions, things to us for the courses for next year. So we'll have a first reading of those at that meeting, but I think that's really the only business, and then the rest will be time for us to have discussion and do some planning. All right? Great. Anything else from any other committees that have anything to share? Board? All right, then let's move on to our student representative reports.
Hi, my name is Lily, and I'm doing the report on LECC for this month. So last month and for the past few months, I've talked mostly about iReady and the learning environment that it's created for students at LECC. And as a result, conferences were undergone on November 4th and 5th to meet family needs and to adapt to the reading intervention data that was recently released. The enrollment and registration time for the Early Childhood Center is also wrapping up, and more information is going to release later in the winter, so you'll probably hear that from me then as well. LECC also had their Terrific Tiger Awards for October and were able to reward kids who showed off Loveland's core values. I'm going to backtrack a little bit and speak further on the adaptation of teaching-based reading and math based on the scores. K through 4 teachers were given instructional practices that align with the results recently given back to teachers about how far along each student is. ODE and requirements for dyslexia and gifted training go along with this so that each student learns at their own pace to be successful. Now into the future, coming up for LACC is fall break, which is from November 23rd to 30th. And on December 4th and 5th, they'll house the Winter Showcase event. For those that don't know, this is when the kids put on performances, and it's really cute. So if you have time, go see it. I'm pretty sure I did square dancing back when we did this when I was a kid. And then I broke my leg, so no square dancing for me. Later into December, we'll see things like grandparents gatherings and Polar Express for the kids to get them kind of in that holiday spirit for their learning environments. And finally, thank you again to all the teachers that make this possible, because it's kind of a time when all that development happens. So lending them that hand is really important to foster their growth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Make sure we get a wide shot so we see the pants for this next report, please.
I don't know if I'll ever wear these pants again after this day.
I love them.
I'm CJ, and this is the LPS LES November board report. So to start, we have some ongoing building and department projects. In third grade, our third graders completed their state air testing on October 22nd and 23rd. LPS teachers are strengthening students' phonics skills with the help of the University of Florida's phonic curriculum. The first quarter conferences were completed on November 4th and 5th, and LPS will have its next round of data reviews November 19th and 20th. Next, we have staff and student accomplishments. LES students are participating in the Read to Feed, where they read books to help benefit the Love and Life food pantry as we near Thanksgiving. Students have started collecting for the Pass It On food drive, which also benefits our Life food pantry, and they're collecting goods for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Next, I have a professional development update. All 3 schools participated in school safety training with Mr. Bryan over there to prepare for any emergencies that may occur. LPS and LES teachers are continuing their work for dyslexic students as well as gifted training. Gifted training is new this year for 2nd grade. So teachers are putting in an extra 15 hours of professional development to make sure they really have that curriculum down. And then before I close, I wanted to give you guys a student's perspective. So this past weekend, I was fortunate enough to go to Washington, D.C. with Mr. Bryant. So great couple of days there. It was Ellie and I and roughly 50, 60 students, all seniors, because COVID ruined our trip in 8th grade. And I just wanted to talk about how great an experience it was, right? How we got to learn about our government, how we got to spend time with our classmates, and how thankful I am to be in a school that does this for its students. And these next couple of days, you'll find me at Camp Kern with a bunch of fifth graders. So we'll see how much sleep I get. But I think it's truly great that our students get to have these opportunities to spend time with kids from other schools, right? It's great to be in the high school with this, like a senior I am, and talk to the fifth graders, right? Like what's new in their lives? What's the difference there between our generations? And I think it's just great to be able to spend time with kids who are in the school district, right? The younger Tigers. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have fun.
Do you have all your outfits picked out for Camp Kern?
Not yet.
Hi, I am Ronan Wolfer, and I'm giving the November report for LMS and LIS. This past month, November 5th, there were Election Day family teacher conferences with thanks to the Mint and PTSA for teacher dinners and a special thanks for teachers for coming in on Election Day. Finding Nemo Jr. recently took place with thanks to the middle school drama department, put on by parent volunteers and the drama directors. Pass It On Food Drive ends November 21st, put on by the Life Food Pantry and the Mint PTSA, in which students will be able to bring in canned food to help those in need over Thanksgiving. The Long Walk for Water recently took place with Matthew 25 Ministries, which raised $10,000 towards wells in Sudan. On Veterans Day, over 50 veterans were honored with poems and letters, with special thanks to Lieutenant Colonel Rob White for ending the day off with taps. The Ohio Middle Level Association Conference took place November 7th and 8th, and staff learned how to further improve the middle school experience. And I'd like to give a shout out to Mrs. Jordan for her service and dedication to students as she was recognized at the conference. Some upcoming events are Camp Kern, as CJ said, November 20th to 22nd, Fall Break from November 25th to 29th, and throughout December, the LMS will celebrate Great Influences with Great Influence events. And there's also a LAS music concert December 9th and 10th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. November has really flown by, and honestly, so has the entire beginning of the school year. We started with several accomplishments. So to begin, the girls soccer team made it to the OHSAA Division II Final Four, which is amazing. Along with this, girls volleyball made it to the Division II Regional Finals. Girls cheer also placed best in the state Division II Game Day Cheer. 3 students from our cross-country team made it to the OHSAA State Cross Country Meet, with Ronan Wolfer placing 21st. That's pretty awesome. And Delaney Silly placing 29th, and Caroline Mernan placing 93rd in girls. The LHS marching band also got a superior rating, 1 at the OMEA. Congrats, Lily. They also placed first in 2 band competitions this season, so that's pretty awesome. And then on Veterans Day, LHSNN created a really cool video to recognize the bravery of those who have served for our country. Thanks to Mr. Burke and the LHSNN team for putting this together for everyone. And I also was on the DC trip and had an amazing time. Whether it was my school counselor trying to get me to jump the fence into the Capitol building, or Mr. Bryant sticking stickers onto my school counselor's backpack and trying to blame it on me. But genuinely, this was such an amazing trip, and I think it wouldn't have been so amazing without our awesome chaperones. They really made it for us. They were amazing. The parents that helped us, and of course, the administrators and the board for allowing us to go on this trip. 4 of our own seniors got to participate in the wreath laying ceremony at Arlington, and it was absolutely beautiful in the morning. It was silent, and it was just a very moving experience. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of our students for great reports. Once again, helping us get a snapshot into what's happening in our buildings. Any questions from board members for our students? And if you would like to go now, you're welcome to. Eric, I have those pants at home. Come on.
That's where they should stay.
Thank you all for being here. Appreciate it. And then move on to our superintendent update.
Superintendent's update, our board representatives. You might want to see the first slide we have. If we put it up, see if you remember this young man. And that is Aaron Spute. Aaron's sent us a message this week saying how much he's enjoying BYU. And Mr. Goldie, nice choice tonight. But Aaron passed along that he felt extremely prepared with his level of education. He said that because of all the work he did in the superintendent's office last year, he actually felt comfortable enough to do stand-up comedy. So he did some stand-up comedy, and he's just a great example of the great kids we have. And it was nice that he sent us a message. I think it's nice for the board to see our kids being successful. So with that, the next slide I put up is really just a link to our newsletter that went out. I don't want to spend too much time. We have enough reports going on, but as the board knows, this is the first year that we did have school in session on Veterans Day, and we had a lot of great ceremonies. We put that out in our newsletter. But the one thing I was going to read, which I thought was very nice to receive, was Tom Cleverton, who is a Vietnam veteran, wrote, "It means so much to me as a Vietnam veteran who was not welcomed home by some after serving a year in South Vietnam and is now thanked for serving with a welcome home message. It brings out a warm, very warm emotion to hear those words. My thanks as well to all of the children who read words, poems, and sang during the ceremony. They were super. I hope you'll continue this very special program in the years ahead so our children, grandchildren, those who follow us will never forget that men and women sacrificed in all wars for our freedom and way of life." So it was, we received a lot of messages. That's one we kind of selected. It was pretty touching and awesome to receive. Next slide that I have is simply today. I thought we'd just say it since we did it today. I would like to thank Tigers Inc. students again and Mr. Mernan and Art Jarvis with the rally that they did. They were able to raise a lot of funds and collect a lot for our Life Food Pantry. So we were down there this morning, and it was a lot of soup. And if you haven't been down there, the facility is really, really nice. They've moved into a new park. So I just figured I would show the board that. Last couple items before I turn it over to our middle school staff. If you did not know, Terry Bean, one of our paraprofessionals at the elementary, and Bruce Mitchell, a counselor at our middle school and high school, received awards from the Little Miami River Chamber Alliance this past Thursday. Thank you. And Mr. Setters did a fantastic job of emceeing the whole program, and we are very proud that our staff gets recognized. And our school district is such an important part of the community, and they recognize that. And the last thing I would say is to what CJ and Ellie were referring to. Mr. Bryant did a great job with the DC trip and all the other chaperones. I can't tell you how many great things I heard about our kids and how their respectful behavior, and we're just very, very proud of them, and Loveland should be proud of them as well. So with that, I am going to finish, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Knapp, Mr. Greg Krosky, and Miss Louise Jordan from the middle school for their presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Broadwater. Hello to the board. We're happy to be here tonight. I wanted to give Ronan a shout out. He kind of teed us up very nicely as he talked about the Ohio Middle Level Association Conference that our team recently went to. We wanted to take the opportunity to speak to the board and just talk a little bit about our experience there, but also update the board as we've made a pretty big commitment the past few years at the middle school in our teaming model. We're in year 3. And as in anything new, year 3 is a good year, right? You kind of hit your stride, you figure out the ways to make things better, figure out the ways that you've kind of done things in the past and really refine some things for the future. So we wanted to take a moment. Mr. Krosky, Mrs. Jordan actually had the idea of bringing some of these ideas up. So it's just an opportunity for us to share some of those updates with you all. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Krosky, Mrs. Jordan. So thank you again for having us tonight. Thank you, Mr. B.
We took a page out of Mr. Broadwater's playbook and got ourselves a binder. So when we flip our pages, Mr. Samuels will know like when to turn the slides for us. I'm Louise Jordan, and I teach 8th grade math here at the middle school on Team Elevate. This is my 20th year of teaching and my 11th year here in Loveland. And I spent my first 4 years of my career in a true teaming model. So I'm excited to be in our 3rd year here doing that here at the middle school.
And I'm Greg Krosky. I'm the 8th grade social studies teacher on Team Elevate as well. This is my 15th year teaching. Also my 11th. Mrs. Jordan and I met in this exact room actually 11 years ago when we both started at Loveland. And I was lucky enough to spend my 2nd and 3rd years teaching using the true teaming model.
Just to define teaming, one of the books that Mr. Knapp has brought to our attention in our building is Taming of the Team and How Great Teams Work Together by Jack Burkmeyer. And he is kind of known as a teaming guru in the middle level world of education. And so when we look at defining teaming, we're looking at bringing a common group of students and teachers together with 5 kind of key pillars that we're, making decisions with those kind of at the core. And so we're looking to help foster communication, not just amongst ourselves as teachers, but with our students and then also with the families of our students. We're looking to allow teachers to really have the opportunity to get to know their students, sharing a common vision, being able to make decisions in the best interest of our students. And then as a team, being able to have consistent policies and procedures so that as they come into our classroom, they know what to expect, whether they're walking into math or whether they're walking to history or science or ELA.
So we wanted to start our discussion about teaming at LMS, kind of looking back at that last decade plus one that we've been here. So from 2014 to 2018, Loveland Middle School used what we would call semi-teaming. There were a core group of teachers that would meet regularly, and that there was 1 science, 1 social studies, and then it'd be 1 or 2 math and 1 or 2 ELA because of the way the classes were structured. People were split, but it also meant not every teacher sitting at that table had every student that was brought up. Science and social studies had the most overlap, ELA and math less so. So it wasn't that true teaming model that a lot of schools use or that Jack Burkmeyer would talk about in one of his books. And then from 2018 to 2022, we shifted, and in order to optimize kind of the staff that we did have during those years, we went to a junior high model. So very much like the high school of every teacher's kind of their own individual. They have their students. But for when I look at my roster, every math teacher in the building might have had my students. So there was no collective group that could get together all the time to talk about those same students. And then in 2022, we made the big shift to go to this teaming model that we have now, where there are 4 of us, 4 teachers and an intervention specialist who share all of our students. They move between us throughout the day. And if one of us brings anyone up, everyone else at the table knows exactly who we're talking about and has seen them that morning at some point. Part of our presentation, we're going to go through and talk about a lot of the different things we do, but we wanted to bring it back to the strategic vision that the district has, because as Mr. Broadwater likes to say, that's not just something we slapped out on the website for people to see. It's what it guides everything we do every day. So for us, teaming really the student success, collaborative culture, and community engagement. So we're going to hit a lot of these things, but we wanted you to see all the different things that cross over between them and how we really are trying to live and model that strategic vision at the middle school.
One of the big things that teaming allows us to do is provide academic supports for the students that we have. At the middle school, we have Tiger Time, which is 30 minutes at the beginning of our day. And having 4 core teachers that share the same 110, 120 students, we get to know them really well. And so it allows us to optimize those groupings of students that we have. We can make moves to students' Tiger Times. We can make moves to students' schedules just to manage maybe it's personalities within the classroom that are tricky, or maybe a student is struggling in math. So we move them from Mr. Krosky's Tiger Time to my Tiger Time as the math teacher, and then I can support them in that time in the morning. But it really allows us as a team to have conversations about kids and make changes to put them in the best situation for success. It also allows us to have targeted intervention and missing work support. So as a team, we can specifically say, hey, we're at interims. We're going to take a week, and on Monday, I'm going to pull all the kids into Tiger Time that have missing work in math. And then Mr. Krosky is going to take Tuesday for social studies. So the academic supports that we can provide for students in the teaming model has been really beneficial. One of the other things that we can kind of target with our students in Tiger Time is that we present a Tiger Time slideshow, and actually we included an example if you'll flip to that next slide. So every morning when the kids come into Tiger Time, they see this exact slide up. There's one for each day of the week. Across the top, we can provide reminders for students. Checking their email and reading the daily announcements is always on there. And then if there's something specific coming up that there maybe is going to be an interruption to Tiger Time. So on maybe Friday, they're not going to have the full Tiger Time. We can give them reminders. They can see things specific to each of their academic classes for the day, reminders about an upcoming test. Maybe it could be something on there that they need a reminder about materials for a class that day, but it just allows them to start their day kind of with a reminder and overview of what they need for each of their classes.
And also it's really helpful for us because we can see what's going on in all the other classes, and we'll give verbal reminders because they're middle schoolers. Not everyone reads every word up there. So it'd be like, hey, ELA honors, don't forget, you've got 12 minutes left to get that assignment submitted that's due at 8 a.m. Or, hey guys, your weekly review's past due. Let's make sure we're getting that done if it's not, so that we're not losing points for it being excessively late.
And one other thing to that is that being on a team, to Mr. Krosky's point, knowing what's happening in each of the classes, we can try our best to make it so that kids don't have, let's say, 3 tests in one day. We have that ability to kind of manage and be flexible with our curriculum and what we're teaching, to just kind of alleviate that stress and anxiety that some kids have for assessments, and kind of space those out for the kids as best we can.
Another thing that being on a team really lets us do is to meet with our students and have that smaller group. Anytime Mr. Knapp tries to get the entire 8th grade together, it's a lot to manage 330 kids. And so being able to take messages from administration and deliver them on a more personalized level with the students is always great, but it also allows us to address issues that we see come up. And there are things all the time that pop up when you're working with 13 and 14-year-olds. So we can focus on the positives, like, hey guys, we've really seen a big improvement in homework completion. Or last week, the American history test average was 10 percentage points higher than it was before. But it also lets us address issues early on to prevent small things from becoming big things. This is also an age group where there are certain topics that we want to discuss with them in a developmentally appropriate way that sometimes needs to be done with separate genders. And so we'll split them and have those conversations. And we're lucky on our team, we have a pretty even split between male and female teachers. So there's always 2 or 3 of us that can go with the boys, 2 or 3 of us that can go with the girls, and have those conversations and personalize them to that group, but also have them in an environment where they're much more comfortable discussing some of those topics and asking questions or sharing their experiences to help us do a better job of managing some behaviors that we might see. And really, this just speaks to the idea that these are our kids, that we can have conversations with them as a collective whole or in small groups, and they know we are the adults in your lives here at school that are charged with looking out for you. And we are gonna continue to do that. Sometimes you're gonna love it and sometimes you're not, and that's okay.
One of the things that we implemented on our team right out of the gate is our raffle incentive program. And so each of the core teachers on our team has a roll of raffle tickets. They're different colors and we each have a bucket in our room. And so students can receive tickets for any number of things: behavior, homework completion, participation in class, modeling good habits, academic performance, and just being an all-around good citizen of our team, Team Elevate, and or just here at LMS. It could be something where, I actually gave a kid yesterday and today a ticket both of the days at the end of math class, because I kind of joked with him. I was like, I feel like I'm living in an alternate universe. Like, what's going on? Like, he's been on it, he's been doing his work. And so it's just a way for us to recognize, the good things that we're seeing out of those kids and kind of incentivize them to continue with those behaviors. And as it says up there, all it takes is one positive moment. It could be, for this kid, these past 2 days has just been amazing. So to be able to give him a ticket, and you'd be surprised how much just getting a ticket makes a difference. Because the other part of it is that we do a quarterly drawing. So at the end of every quarter, we get our whole team together in Miss Stagg's choir room, and we draw names out of each of our buckets. We just go down the line, we draw names out of the bucket, and we get donations of prizes from local businesses. So you can see on our graphic there some of the businesses that sponsored our first quarter incentive raffle. I would add to that Brittany Freach also donated some gift cards. And is the middle school PCSA is up there as well. Okay, so they also made a donation for us to be able to buy gift cards to use as prizes for our quarterly drawing. So big thank you to Mr. Charlie Myris, who's the ELA teacher on our team, because he kind of takes that on for us and reaches out to the businesses and keeps everything organized for us. And I think we had like 40 plus, I think, prizes that we were able to draw names for first quarter, and we have 110 kids on our team. So almost half of our kids get their name drawn for a prize.
The other thing that we like to do are team celebrations. So first semester, at the end of December, right as we're heading on winter break, that last day, as anyone who's ever worked in a school knows, is a mess of a schedule. And so what we try and do is have a pizza party for the kids. We bring them down here into the media center. We've got a ton of pizzas laid out from La Rosa's, who we appreciate, gives us a great discount on that. But then we have snacks and water and desserts, and the kids just get to sit and hang out, eat with their friends, who a lot of them may not have lunch together because we have the 2 lunches at 8th grade, and they can just sit with their friends for about an hour before we head down to the pep rally we always have in the gym, relax. Some of them will come over and start conversations with us. It's just a different environment than you get to have every day in the classroom. And it's always interesting for us to see, okay, who is Johnny sitting with in here? And that's actually really valuable information for us going back when we come back from break. So as much as it's fun and relaxed, we learn a lot as well watching it. And then second semester, at the end of third quarter, we do a pancake breakfast incentive. The last 2 years, we have taken wherever our averages were at the end of second quarter in each of our classes, and we've bumped them up 2 or 3 percentage points. And we tell the kids, if you guys can get your third quarter averages up to these target goals, I'll come in early one morning and make pancakes so everyone gets to eat pancakes in Tiger time that morning, and just start your day a little differently. And some years they've hit it and some years they haven't, and that's just how it goes. But it is something we do to try and push them that, great, you did awesome second quarter. Let's see if we can do a little better third quarter. And then to wrap things up in May, we have an ice cream party out back, weather permitting, every year. And we've brought in ice cream trucks. We've also it's given us a chance to invite parents to come in, and they'll scoop for us if we're building ice cream sundaes or things like that. So it's just a great way to end the year. Last year, we were also able to incorporate a baby shower for Mrs. O'Brien, who is the science teacher on our team, who had her first son over the summer.
One of the things that we did in preparing for this is we reached out to the current sophomores and the current freshmen as our former students on Team Elevate, just to get their feedback and kind of see what they thought about the teaming experience and being a part of Team Elevate. And so we summarized here on this slide kind of the things that they shared with us. They felt that being on our team fostered a strong sense of community and connection among students throughout the year. They expressed that they enjoyed the engaging activities, including the raffle drawings, the team celebrations, and the team bonding events that we do. A lot of the students mentioned that they cherished their time on Team Elevate as their most memorable school experience. They appreciated the effective communication among the teachers, and that was helpful for them in managing their workload and their assignments, and that they also just appreciated the fun, relaxed atmosphere of 8th grade. Oh, yes, I said this earlier today when we were practicing, but one of Jack Berkemeyer's things is the 8th grade is not a farm team for the high school. So like, as much as we emphasize skills and things that they need to be working on and preparing for high school, we're not high school yet. And so having our teaming atmosphere and really helping support the kids where they're at and the needs that they have, you know, that's something that I've seen Jack Berkemeyer multiple times now, and that's something that's always stuck with me, is that they're still 8th graders. They're 13, they're 14 years old, and we're not a farm team for the high school. So creating an experience for them that reflects that is really important to us.
So tying this into that OML conference that Mr. Knapp mentioned and Ronan mentioned in his speech, we were lucky enough that a big group of us, including Mrs. Jordan and myself, were able to go to OMLA, which is the Ohio Middle Level Association Conference, at the beginning of November. And it's a great chance just to hear a lot of different things that a lot of different middle schools are doing and hear presentations geared towards this age group. We also were lucky enough that Jack Berkmeyer was there presenting, and we were able to go to a number of his presentations. And the two real big things we took away from him are the emphasis of reaching all kids, which really ties into our Every Tiger Every Day at the middle school, that someone is always there looking out for you and wanting to make that connection and helping you succeed. And one of the last things he said to us was every student needs an advocate. So there are those kids that it's really easy to advocate for because they build those adult relationships, but then also as the adults, finding the students who need us to build that relationship with them and be their advocate. And the great thing with the team is 100 kids seems like a lot, but when there's 4 and 5 of us, there's 20 of them. And of that 20, maybe there's 2 or 3 that I really have to be the one to put forth the extra effort to build that relationship. So we've already started talking about what does that look like as we head into winter break, and then what's that look like second semester as well. We also heard some great presentations on AI, both for students and how to teach them how to appropriately use it, as well as the ethics involved with it, because it's not going anywhere. And if we are truly going to prepare our students for the next steps of life, we need them to be AI literate and AI users, but do it in the best ways possible. It also was great for us to see different ways we can use it to streamline our workload and be more efficient in our time. The last thing too is we got to network with some different teams, both in Southwest Ohio, but also across the state, and see what they do. Because teaming is going to look different in every district based on their scheduling constraints, their staffing, and what their community values most. So hearing what other districts do and seeing how they attack different problems is always great for us as we continue in year 3 and then going into year 4, refining teaming here at LMS. And then our last thing is looking forward. So, the district was generous enough to send us to OMLA, and that's a financial outlay that we understand we need to then use. So where do we go next? One place is we're expanding our elective opportunities, and we've been able to do this since the very beginning of teaming. And as the board, you've seen those electives come through, whether it was Tigers 101, Puzzle Masters, whether it was project-based myths and legends, and then there are going to be more that Dr. Puerch is going to be bringing to you from our science department. Teaming has allowed us to bring those elective opportunities to our students. So we're continuing to push there. With the administration move around at the end of last year with Mr. Bruce's administrative spot and bringing in Brian Lee, he has really taken on the challenge of looking at our master schedule and looking at some of the challenges we face, and are there ways that we can work on that to improve what we're doing. And that really does take that holistic macro lens that it's really hard for any of our principals to do. So to have someone in the district office that's working on that, it means a lot to us that you guys have recognized, and Mr. Broadwater has recognized the need for someone that can do that. We really appreciate that and look forward to hearing what he brings, and is someone coming from a district that has done teaming that looks a little different than how we do. And then just OMLA and all the conversations we have, and even in our professional development, is how do we fine tune our implementation of our model? We can see what's in Jack Berkmeyer's book. We can't do everything in there because no one could do everything in there. So it's what can we take from him or from other districts to continue to push LMS to the next step so that we are serving, every Tiger every day.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say, from a parent's perspective, I love teaming because my daughter's in 7th grade, and just getting that information report. And I don't know if the 8th grade does that too, but having it all together and knowing who the team members are and always seeing their faces in emails and seeing what each group is, or each subject matter is doing each week, also gives kudos to not having a test on the same day. But having those smaller teams allows students to find that trusted adult, safe person that they can talk to if they need to. So I like that a lot.
I could jump in just to say, first of all, that was awesome. I appreciate you presenting and taking the time to do it. You didn't have to do that. I appreciate it. I had the ability to listen to Jack Burkmeyer about 15 years ago in the district I was in. It's an extremely positive message, but it's about building relationships with kids. And your presentation was student-centered. The one part of the slide that I read that I liked was, these are our kids. We can have conversations as a collective whole. And we're all, you're content experts, math, social studies, whatever it is, but we're also leaders of kids. And if a student has one adult advocating for them, then we're doing pretty well. So you guys did a great job. Thanks to Mr. Knapp. He has done a great job of bringing in the teaming. I would say it takes 3 to 5 years in education to get things going. And I think we're moving pretty well, but the scheduling has been great without any additional staff. It's just figuring out a way to do it. And Mr. Lee was brought on to maybe, can we refine a little bit? But all in all, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate everything you had to say. Mr. Knapp, could you remind me what award Louise just won?
Louise won a OMLA Regional Educator Award.
Amazing, congrats.
I just had one question, and and kind of hearing about all of the advantages for kids is great, and I don't have any real concerns at all. You obviously know very well what you're doing. We're 3 years into the program. I know you kind of referenced a 3 to 5 year roll-in. You plan to extend it through all of 7th and 8th grade? Is this a subset of kids in 7th and 8th grade?
We are teamed across the board.
Okay.
So each grade level, we have 3 different teams.
You were just talking about your team of 120.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would say across the building, 7th grade teams and 8th grade teams, there's a variety of similar things happening across the board.
Mhm.
We spoke specifically to our team that we're on and the things that we do. But I think to Mrs. Jarenek's point, every team sends a weekly email to all of their families every Friday. So kind of giving them a heads up of, hey, next week, this is what your kids should expect to see in their classes, important reminders, dates for upcoming tests, things like that. So there's things that are kind of sprinkled throughout all of the teams in 7th and 8th grade that are happening, similar to the things that we spoke about.
Perfect. I just wanted to make sure that I understood that this was still a trial with you guys running it, obviously with much more background than most of the teachers. And then the second part of that would be, is there value in other grade bands in other schools to that type of approach? Is this a uniquely 7th, 8th grade problem? Is this a 5th, 6th grade thing as well? And I don't need you to speak to it as much as Dave and
Can I
Mike.
jump in on that?
Yes, please.
So if you think about like teaming for us, it's going to look a little bit different than like teams would at LIS or LES. And I would say that LIS is set up in teams as well. But at LIS, you're going to have teachers who are teaching maybe 2 different subjects, and the teams are going to be smaller. Most teams over there are going to be between 2 teachers, but I think there's 1 team of 3 at LIS as well. I believe LES is the same setup as LES too.
And I would say at the high school level, obviously you're moving towards adulthood and maturation, and every step you want to give a little bit more freedom. It's kind of like, if you remember with our cell phone policy, the students at the middle school are only using it in the cafeteria. The high school, we sit in between classes in the cafeteria. So we brought on Link Crew, which is a freshman orientation. You focus on the freshmen and the sophomores quite a bit. And by the time they're juniors and seniors, we've got a lot of kids that are doing college credit plus and so forth. So there's a lot more freedom at the high school. I like what you said about you're not the farm. I think you said you're not the farm team for the high school. You're obviously developing the kids, but you want to have a good sound basis when they go to the high school, and you want them to be comfortable with who they are. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but each step you get a little bit more freedom as you go.
I would just say thank you. You give it helped give a window into the classrooms and what the daily experience looks like for our middle school kids. So I really, really appreciate that view. And then I appreciate that seeing, it's when an organization at whether it's a school or any type of organization sets up a strategic vision, it often just sits in a piece of paper. So when you see it, that it's working at all levels of the organization, and we're continuing to just challenge ourselves to say, how do we do better to serve our customers, in this case, the kids of our community, it's really helpful for us to see and get that picture of what it looks like on a day-to-day basis. So appreciate all of you that are implementing it, as well as all the leaders that are leading the way. It's really great to see. So thank you.
I just add kudos to you. You thanked the district for the dollars for you to go to the conference. That's clearly money well spent because you went with the intention of learning, growing, sharing, and getting the most you could, and then bringing that back to the district. And so thank you for making good that investment and all of the work that you guys do. Clearly, you're very dedicated to the kids and the kind of teachers we want to hold up and to have mentoring younger teachers as well as our students. So thank you for your dedication to this work. Mr. Knapp, I also want to say thank you. Good to have you back at our board meeting. Our prayers continue with your family and glad your wife is doing well. Yeah. Thank you.
Nice job. I'm going to turn over to, sorry. They deserve the round of applause. Jesse Coles, I'm going to turn it over to Jesse, who's our Director of Student Services. We try and have our departments present to give you a little bit of a view of what they've got going on. And a lot of our focus with the student service in our CAT team, our community advisory team, was mental health. And so we thought Jesse could provide a little bit of insight with that, but also everything else he does. So Jesse.
Thank you. Greg, before you sneak off, can I get in on those pancakes? Take that as a no. I'll go back to my student service offices back in the corner where they usually keep me. That was a solid no. He didn't even look back.
No. He didn't even think about it. No.
Pants like CJ had.
Yeah, so CJ's pants were awesome. I feel like Mike and Mr. Espy set me up with this board agenda tonight. I thought I was gonna be the only one presenting, not following our awesome kids and our outstanding teachers, but here we go. All right, so I will do my
At least
best.
it's not budgets, so.
At least it's not. That's true. Thank you for that. Sorry, John. We got that going for me. So here we go. We'll jump in. Before we do, just thank you. Thank you for all your support. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I really appreciate it. I don't have the binder trick, so I'll just kind of look over at you. I don't know. Mostly, I just want to say we have an awesome team. Donna and Kim do a fabulous job in our office. What I like about them is two things. One, they're student-centered, and two, they're customer-centered, right? Like, so they don't get caught up in just, I have to stay focused on my device and locked in on what I'm typing. If somebody comes by, they'll stop what they're doing, they'll make eye contact, they'll have a conversation, sometimes a long conversation. So if you come visit, be prepared. But they are student-centered, they are customer service mindset. And then working directly with Stacy and Adam and Brian, our offices are super close together. Like we literally will yell down the hallway, Stacy, you in there? She answers, even if she doesn't want to. Yes, I'm here. And then I walk over and we'll power through whatever it is we need to talk about. And then obviously Mike and Garth and Rich and Andrew and all the folks. Everyone is super student-centered, which makes my job easier because student services is my office. So I'm going to come at it from that lens. I'm always going to be looking at what can we do to make sure every child has access to everything we're doing every single day. And I don't really have to argue with anybody, which is awesome. I know some of my friends that do this work, their conversations are a little harder than the ones I have, but that's just because our team is student-centered. So I appreciate that, and thank you all for that. All right, I thought this would be fun. My definition of fun can be defined differently than yours, but I thought some questions for you all. You don't have to yell them out. You don't have to shout them out. If you want to turn and tell a neighbor, go ahead, an elbow partner, if you will. You're welcome to do that. But what percentage of students in Loveland have an IEP? What? Hopefully you know this one. Mike does a great job of saying these often. What are our 3 PBIS core values? Look at that. We were all over that one. Good job, Mike.
My kindergarten granddaughter tells me those regularly. So
I love that. That's what I like to hear for sure. Under IDEA, how many eligibility categories are there? Approximately, based on enrollment data, how many different languages are spoken in the homes across our district? Something like that. Yep, right around there. And then what language is spoken by the highest percentage of our English language learners? The SAFE Act, House Bill 318, is one of the strongest state laws in the nation in the area of what? Well, the clue is the student services director is the one doing the presentation. So that kind of helps narrow the scope a little bit. Our most recent collaboration is a partnership with an organization that helps connect families. They serve kind of as a bridge. We're really excited about this. Okay. And then when we check in with our students, which I'm going to talk about here in a little while, is what do we ask them? So just some things. These are some things we'll cover as we go. Just thought it'd be a little fun for you all to think that through. Quick overview, quick look at, here's what we do in our office. In the student services office, we keep pretty busy. And here are the main things. Like obviously the number one thing is overseeing the special education programming. But right behind that, and a big part of that is compliance work. The department, ODE, do, whatever, all of these folks have continued to add layers of compliance to the work that we do. I tell Mike, half joking, I spend more time defining and defending the work I do than actually doing work for kids. And that's partially true. That's probably a slight exaggeration, but that's a big part of our work. Then obviously we oversee English language learners, the nurses, the psychs. I'm not going to read the list to you. You can see it. Our office keeps plenty busy. If you wonder what I'm doing all day, it is somewhere within this realm of things.
When Jesse says our office, he means him. That's his office.
That is accurate. And just our district by the numbers. These are numbers from our state report card last year. And I do that on purpose because we have folks that will be, where did you get that number? That's not the number I can find. So I just use numbers that anybody that wants to find them can find them. So here's just a quick overview, a quick summary, but these numbers are fluid. They change often. But our enrollment is up there. Our students that we serve with disabilities hovers right around 14%. And it's been there since I've been in this role, right around the 13, 14, 15% window. In Ohio, we're always right at the state average, a little below it, which I find interesting because we hear a lot about how many people move here to receive special education services. But even with that being said, we're still at the state average. What we find are folks that have students with really significant needs and families that have the means move here. So the folks that are moving in tend to be students that have a lot of different needs. And then we do our best to serve them. I could tell you just, I was talking about this morning with our team. Within the last month, we've had 3 students move in with what we would consider low incidence or really high needs and are going to be served by our least restrictive environment, our most intense groups. 504s, we have a lot of students that are served or supported with a 504. Students that are identified as EL, you can see the numbers up there. Students that we are supporting through McKinney-Vento, right now it is 9. It's actually probably down to 6. That is a really fluid number. Folks secure housing, then they lose housing, and that number kind of fluctuates. But what we try to do is we try to be aware. Like, there's not a lot more than we can do other than that, is be aware of the students that need some support. We make sure they have a ride to and from school. We make sure they have free and reduced lunch. If they need some supplies and materials, we make sure we have those. So when we're looking at our special ed population, here is the breakdown. It is 13 categories. Technically 14 because the preschool rules have changed a little bit, but 13 categories are what most people still look at. We have what we call our low incidence classes. For us, those are going to be autism, and you can see that's a pretty high percentage. So of our students that have an IEP, 12% of them are diagnosed with autism. And when you have students with autism, that comes with a variety of needs and a variety of challenges and a whole spectrum of things. But for us, we have found that there are students that need quite a bit of support. Those low incidence numbers, as you know, we've had a pocket of students moving through. We added to our low incidence team at IS a few years ago. 2 years ago, we added at the middle school. Well, that population of kids will be rolling into the high school next year. So that's a number we're keeping an eye on, and that's an area we're going to grow, and we're going to have to do some work with Mr. Collier on that. But this just gives you an idea. The majority of our students on an IEP are with what is called a specific learning disability. So that's going to be your reading, your written language, your math. The second highest for us is OHI minor. Those are going to be things like ADHD, some sort of, they need support due to a heart condition or diabetes, but the overwhelming majority of those are ADHD. That just kind of gives you a little snapshot of the students we are serving. This is an area, and you all know this because we've talked about it a lot. Huge area of growth for us is our English language learners. The new term is multilingual learners, MLs. For the purpose of this presentation, I kept it at ELs just because that's what we all know, but know that that is kind of changing over. You can see there, again, the numbers in red are from our state report card. That way everybody knows where I got it, they can see it, and we're all looking at the same data. From 1920, we had 48 students identified as ELs. In 22-23, we're up to 102. Right now, I ran a report just because I was curious what we're looking at for this year. Currently today, it is 154. That number can and will change as students test in and out and things like that. So, but that growth has been so fast. It's not so much that it's growth, it's how fast it has happened. We've done a good job with it. We have tried really hard with it. We have added to our EL team. Garth did an awesome job of being able to find ways to support that team without adding additional staff last year. We've worked on really training our classroom teachers. We train them in something called SIOP, which is just research-based strategies to support students that English is not their first language. We have over 40 teachers trained in that right now. Just like 2 years ago, we were at like 15. So we've worked really hard to try to train folks up. The number one language up there you can see is Uzbek. 33% of our EL students speak Uzbek as their primary language. And then there's just other information I'm not going to go through here, but you will have it on the slideshow if you're interested. This one, I find this super interesting. This is really what it boils down to when I say I spend as much time documenting the work, backing up the work, defending the work, telling folks what the work is. It really comes from this. 16-17, due at the time ODE decided, hey, let's do a special ed profile. And we all thought, oh, that's fabulous. Yes, let's do that. So they decided to rank us on 13 categories. Loveland at that time had enough students and enough categories to be ranked on 9 of them. So when it first came out, that was the plan. These 13 categories, we'll see how schools are doing. 21-22 is when I took over in this role. We were up to 98 categories they are now checking and monitoring. As a district, we had enough students to be checked and monitored in 58 of them. That is a huge jump in 5 years. That really does redefine the role in the work that I am doing. We are now up to last year's report card or profile, I'm sorry, had 210 performance indicators on there. So the more indicators they have, the more opportunity for us to get to write some sort of an improvement and growth plan for our teams. So I spend a lot of time doing that. And what we try to do is, we know those are there. We know those are going to happen. We still work really hard as a team, with Mike's blessing to do what's best for kids, and then we'll figure out how to make sure we're doing all these things correctly. And we try to own that the best that we can and keep it from our teachers. I will do the improvement plan. I will do that type of thing. But it does trickle down. Like we've had to add different PD for them. We've had to add different sessions they've had to attend. We've had to have them document some of their work in different ways. But this is just one of those things. Like I think it comes from a good place. Let's make sure the districts are doing well. Let's make sure all of our kids have the opportunity to learn. But 210 performance indicators is a lot. That's a lot that we are really trying to monitor and check dates and check just documents and things like that. So that's that. Mental health supports, you can see up here, we have a lot of different things in place. And this is really what Mike asked me to talk about, but I figured I had you all as a captive audience. I was going to add those other slides as well. So thank you for tolerating them. But we have, these are just some of the things we're really excited about. Our Hope Squad, our PBIS. The middle school was talking about PBIS without using the phrase PBIS, but they were talking about looking for and acknowledging students making good choices. SAFE Act, House Bill 318 is one of the strongest laws in the country when it comes to PBIS. So not only do we think PBIS is best practice, at least I do, the state tells us we have to do it. So even if you weren't on board and you think it's kind of silly, we still have to work through it and we still have to navigate some of the rules and do some of the things based on that House Bill 318. We really focus on direct instruction. What are our expectations? Let's teach our students explicitly how we want them to do things and then recognize them for it. Mental health check-ins, I'll talk about here in a second. And then of course we have awesome counselors and school psychs and we try to utilize them as effectively as we can. You don't have to click on it, yeah. So there's 2 links on this document. Due to time, I'm not gonna have Adam click on them now. You can check them out, but the first one is basically a 1-pager that lists out all of the mental health programming we have, all of the things we are doing, and which buildings are doing it. It's a really nice visual representation of the work happening. The second document is an explanation for folks that need it or are interested in why do we do this. A few reasons. One, we need to, the research tells us, all the data tells us our kids need the support. Two, through the strategic visioning process, our community, our family, our students, our teachers all said, hey, we need this. And then three, a lot of this is mandated by state rules and regulations. So that's those two links. Feel free to check them out. When you do, if you have any questions, let us know. But the thing I really want to talk about next is our check-in. We have our students checked in middle school and high school. We check in with them once a week. Is something we allow our families to choose to not participate in. And one thing we're really excited about as a leadership team is a total of 13 students opt out and do not participate. So out of all of our middle school, all of our high school kids, 13 choose not to participate. Everyone else is participating and doing these check-ins. So here's just a quick summary of it. Every Tuesday, grades 7 through 12, we check in with our kids. We ask them 3 questions. 1, how are you feeling today? 2, on a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate your overall wellness? And 3, how can we help? And then we have systems in place at the middle school and at the high school with our counselors and our school psychs. Mostly our counselors, but our school psychs are involved and our admin are involved as needed that follow up with kiddos. So if a student says, question number 3 is the most frequent one. If a student says, I need to talk to a grown-up, we make sure someone goes and talks to that kid. Question number 1, how are you feeling today? If we have a student that typically is happy and optimistic and that type of thing, and then a couple weeks in a row, maybe they put sad or anxious or depressed or whatever, we will go check in on that kid. Same with question number 2. So we have systems in place to where this is an opportunity for students to reach out to an adult explicitly with question 3, or our adults to look for patterns and trends and then go reach out to the kids based on this. This is something we put in place. What was it, Mike, our second year here? I think we started talking about it our first year, but we put it in place second year, and I'm really happy with this, really proud of this work. A lot of other districts are picking this up. But if you want to go to the next slide. Kind of talked about this a little bit, but so on the how are you feeling today, students have emojis that they choose from. On a scale of 1 to 5, it's a drop down with the numbers 1 through 5. And then question number 3 is a multiple choice. I would like to talk to a counselor. I would like resources. I have the strategies I need. No follow-up needed. And here's what it looks like. It's hard to see on here, but those are the emojis they can choose from: tired and happy and worried, to excited, optimistic. And then you can see there. So here, you can go back to that. Yep. So here is just our data to this point this year. The middle blue is happy. No, I'm sorry, that is tired. Tired is our number 1 response. And those of you that are on the board and have been here for a while, I did this presentation last year and it looked just like this. We'll do it next year and it'll probably look just like this. This is one thing that has been consistent every time we have done this and every time we run this data. Happy is the green and blue is the tired. Those are always our top 2 answers. For the most part, our kids are happy, but they are tired, which I find super interesting. The other thing I did like about this year's data is the 3rd highest one is energized. Thought that was kind of cool. Not sure where it's coming from, but you know, our energized, happy, tired kids.
I think if we surveyed our staff, we'd probably get happy and tired too. So.
Definitely tired, hopefully happy. And this is just kind of the stuff we talked about at the beginning. So it's right around 14%, care, respect, responsibility. You guys were all over that one. The eligibility categories, 30 plus languages, PBIS, care portal. I think I heard Len say that. And then how are you feeling today on a scale of 1 to 10? What is your overall wellness and how can we help? Questions, comments, concerns?
I thought it was funny. My daughter frequents down children's for an eye issue, and the other day she had to go in late on a Tuesday. She's like, oh, hold on, I have to do my check-in first.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love to hear
It's
that.
like,
Yeah.
Once
They get used to it, you're right. Once they get used to it, it's just part of the routine. They log into Aubrey and it pops up. It's not like they have to go look for it before they can even move on to their resources, Google Classroom, whatever it is they need, they have to click on the responses. Yeah.
Have you had an opportunity to kind of dive into any of the resources through the Children's Hospital nationwide in Columbus and their mental health.
I have not.
Went to a session at OSBA.
Yeah,
that was put on
good
by
stuff.
2 of the doctors and I think a nurse practitioner. I
Yeah.
could be wrong on that part, but very informative, and they have a lot of free programs and resources.
Yeah, well, I'll
At
definitely
some
have to
point
check it out.
we'll Want to dive into.
Yep, for sure.
I like to piggyback on that a little bit. NAMI's right around the corner. It's a newer organization here in Cincinnati. They're another resource with a lot of free information for students and families. I do like this. This is a neat way for check-ins, and I think it's good. It brings the awareness because it's culturally, not everyone accepts mental health. And I think our students need to learn and grow and realize that there are some issues out there that they need to work on. We are here to help them.
Yeah. It just gives our kids one more opportunity to ask for help in a different kind of way. Not all of our kids are going to go scan the QR codes. Not all of our kids
Right.
are actually going to walk up and ask for somebody for help. And even on this, they're not all going to ask for help. But if they are checking like SAD or whatever, we can go help them without them asking for it. So, yeah, thanks.
Jesse, I appreciate that you actually worked really hard to find a tool that would be acceptable and easy to implement early on. And it looks like the stickiness is working really well. I mean, only 13 people not doing it is a great thing to see. Is there a separate breakout on the third question about, how many kids do reach out to ask for help? And so that would just be a nice thing to see over time.
Yeah, we can definitely get that for you.
I think that's some value. And then the second part, and this has value going forward in the future with some of the conversations we've had recently about, especially about high school age children and their, awakeness or tiredness in the morning. It would be nice to see if we do end up making any changes in schedules over time, how does that affect that number?
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get happy above tired.
Right. That's funny that you say that. Mike and I talked about that too. We said this will be a great data point. I'm not sure if it'll change or not, but it'll be definitely something that we can monitor and look at. They are telling us currently they are tired. If we make a change, it would be great for them to tell us, hey, that worked.
I would really like to see that, although they are teenagers.
Yes.
But the flip side is, I mean, I would say, overwhelming, maybe slightly too strong of a word, but overwhelming evidence that later start times are better for high school students.
Yep, I agree 100%. Not just for this chart either, just their overall mental health and wellness and all the things.
Just to jump in real quick and say thank you to Jesse. When we talked about this, might have been year 1 and we got it to year 2. It's not an easy thing to have our staff embrace because there's a lot of responsibility with counselors and school psychs when we do have a student that may put something that they do need help. And Jesse's done a great job of navigating and making sure that we take care of each other, and the counselors and the school psychs have been fantastic with all of this because it's a big responsibility, but they have done a great job. And I know we've at least intervened with one student. I'm sure it's more, but even if it's just one, it's been worth it. And it's worked very well thanks to Jesse's leadership.
Yeah, actually where it came from was Mike's first year here. We were coming out of COVID, if y'all remember. You guys were asking him, how are the kids? So then you know what he does? He comes and asks me, how are the kids?
Yeah.
I don't know how the kids are. I was at LECC for the last 4 years. Y'all got me in this office down in the corner now. I don't know, Mike. He's like, well, I need you to let me know. So, okay.
That's called
I started
leadership,
working on
Jess.
figuring it out. So that's where it came from.
Now we know they're tired.
Now we know they are tired. But Mike's right. We've had plenty of kids in the high school. Counselors will tell you they have had kids that they have talked to. They have kids that they now have regularly scheduled appointments with that started with how the students responded to the questions. Sometimes the kids will say, I need to talk to somebody, and they'll come in and be like, I don't like my math class. Can I change it? And I feel like that's okay, right? They needed to talk to a grown-up. This gave them an avenue to do it. It wasn't what it was intended for, but it served the purpose of getting them to a counselor. Anyway. All right.
Yeah.
Appreciate you guys supporting it.
Just really
Yeah.
quick. So I appreciate just the scope of what you do is massive. One piece of feedback I've gotten just over time is with Hope Squad, that I do think that kids are more likely probably to talk to a peer than they are to an adult. I think something for us to just consider over time is the kids that are on Hope Squad, they're chosen at an early grade level. And sometimes I just think over time, there's opportunities there for us. So not something you need to answer now, but
I can't answer it now, but I can speak to it and say those are conversations that we have had as our leadership team. And I actually talked to Rachel Freeman Hicks about that today, ironically enough, just because she was talking about some upcoming things with Hope Squad. And That conversation was like, hey, how can we be more inclusive and making sure that we're representing as many different groups as
Yeah.
we can? How can that evolve a little bit over time? I know Mike has had conversations with students about it too. So
Yeah.
yes, I appreciate you bringing that up, and that is definitely on our radar. I'm not exactly sure what that's going to look
Right.
like, but it is conversations we are having.
I think, I mean, the middle school talked about the Team Elevate, how they reached out to their kids that were in
Yeah.
their team, that are now freshmen and sophomore. I think you have some recent grads or kids that are in the higher grades that would be happy to lean in
Yeah.
with
for sure.
feedback that have been on Hope Squad or out, Hope Squad near.
Yep.
That would offer feedback on that.
Thank you.
And Nationwide did talk about Hope Squad, so I know they have information too. Everything is research-based on their site, so they
Yeah.
can utilize that information from there as well.
Yeah, I think the Hope Squad itself, everyone likes and enjoys. We're just trying to figure out how do we,
Yeah.
I don't know, make it more all-encompassing, I guess, for sure.
I want to say thanks for including the first part of your report that you said was not, what you were asked to speak on, but I think it's really important to see the full scope of the work you're doing, to see how work in both of those areas has expanded. And for us as a board to continue to think about the reality that that becomes a liability at some point for us to be able to take care of our kids when we're asking one person to do so many different things and to cover so many different bases. And so I think it's something that we've got to keep our eye on. It's certainly something I know Mr. Broadwater is keeping his eye on, and something we've discussed and we're going to have to continue to consider as a board as we move forward. The other thing I would just share with the board and for the 20 people that are watching us out there is just that also to continue to think about how legislation impacts some of these things. Certainly you're talking about how many different categories you have to track. But on the second half of your report and thinking about when we're asking our kids, do you need to speak to an adult? And we know that's a challenge for kids to take that step and say, yeah, I do need to talk to an adult. There's a risk factor for them, a trust factor. There's some pending legislation, House Bill 8, that could call into question a kid's ability to speak in confidence to a counselor. And I know that one of their concerns about parental rights and so forth that we want to care for, and we want to make sure we respect parental rights. We also want to make sure kids are able to get the support they need. And so I think people need to look very closely at that bill and what its intent is, and to make sure that kids are able to have trust that they can speak to someone in confidence at school, because I think that is a very important thing for our kids to have that option.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thus ends the superintendent's update. I appreciate the time. We don't have something in December, and it's good information for the board to hear, so I appreciate the time.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Goldie is here now to talk about the CAT team #2 meeting, along with Mr. Espy, who reported to the CAT team about district finances. So I'm not sure which one of you is going first, but
I'm gonna start out, and then we'll bring up Mr. Goldie here shortly. I'll get there quick, I promise. All right, so I just want to first say it's really awesome to have the community input that we have. I felt like the hardest working man in show business the night of the CAT #2 meeting, because I had the CAT meeting for an hour and went right into a finance town hall. But it was really good to see, first of all, people join both meetings, but also just the candid feedback we got. I felt like the information shared really hit home, and that was really important for me to see. But again, people showing up on a random Wednesday night to learn about school finance, which is not always the most interesting of topics, but important nonetheless. Was just really, really great. So what I did is I shared some information. I'm going to kind of give you the greatest hits of the information I shared so we can put the feedback that we got into context. So this is something you're going to hear, and that's actually later on in my 5-year forecast presentation, but 3 points that we are really driving home. When we look at our spend, we're at 62% of Ohio schools spend more than Loveland City Schools. When we look at our teaching staff, 97% have more support in teachers than we do. And when we look at our administrators, 96% of school districts in Ohio have more support. So with sharing that information, and this is just one piece of the information that was shared that night, we were able to get some feedback that we asked for the CAT team members after, after that meeting. What was great to see is that it looked like 100% of all the respondents felt like they had a better understanding of our finances. So it was great to see. When we looked at how one thing that I really wanted to get out of that meeting is, how do you want to be communicated with? And that's something that's a passion of mine. So seeing newsletters and social media posts, those are going to be something that we're working on. I've already worked with Mr. Broadwater and Mr. Setters on kind of developing a plan of how we're going to start pushing that out. Also, information videos and additional meetings. We do have, eventually we're going to be having some additional meetings with our school funding committee. We've also asked people to join the school funding committee from the CAD team if they're interested, and kind of vice versa. So it's been a good community effort, but this is really good feedback to get on how people want to be communicated with. When we looked at specifically asking if we advocate for solutions to our funding issues here, all but one respondent said yes. So it was interesting to kind of see that feedback. And then when we looked at another piece of information that I shared, the orange line is showing our enrollment over the last 10 years. And this is using the CUP report data through 2023, which is the latest that we have. So what you see is the enrollment has dropped 11.52% over the last 10 years. The blue line is our FTE, or our full-time equivalent. You'll hear Mr. Collier talk about that a little bit later with the FTE chart that he's so famous for. And by the way, districts ask me all the time, hey, can we get that FTE chart? No, I swear. I'm walking around at OSBA. People are, I think you might have a consulting gig on your hands here in a little while. But anyway, I digress. I got to keep this thing moving. When we look at the blue line, what that tells us is that we're staying within our enrollment. So we're adjusting to our enrollment. And also we're dropping, yes, our enrollment is dropping, but the enrollment is dropping throughout the state at a clip of about 3% per year. So, the final question before I turn it over to Mr. Goldie, Dr. Goldie, thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to demote you there. Looking at this was, do you feel like, as a respondent, that we're keeping up with the student enrollment staffing levels? And all but one respondent felt that we were. So, again, great feedback that we were getting from the community throughout these meetings. And I'd like to bring up Dr. Goldie to talk about the last slide and maybe a little bit more.
I will say, my wife always says that when someone says, is there a doctor here? She's like, you're the least helpful kind of doctor possible. So that's definitely the case. So the feedback from the meeting that we got, we went through it and looked at it. And I talked with Mr. Espy about it. We went through it. And there's always, school funding is a difficult topic because there's simultaneously the feeling of we're glad that the efficiency measures are good. There was expression of be nice to be able to have more teachers relative to our students, even though that's a good efficiency measure. No offense to anyone here, there wasn't a lot of expression of we need more administrators, but we love the ones we have. And really, I think it came down to the recommendations. It's not a list kind of like last time. It kind of went into 3 core buckets. And these 3 buckets are here. And really, they're saying we want, and as far as what the district is communicating to the community as well, they want to know that, 1, are you looking for any sources of external funding? Basically, the answer is all of the above, right? And so just being able to communicate, these are the things we're doing, these are the places we're looking. This is every single stone that's been turned over. The second one was, no one loves the state structure of funding. We know that that's not in the district's power to just flip a switch, but they do like the idea of saying, are you pushing against that stone? Right? And so that's the second thing, is what are we doing to kind of in a long-term strategy to try to fix this state structure that's been broken before any of us were thinking about talking about this topic. It's been broken for a long time. So are we still pushing on that stone? And the third one is just appreciation and for any efforts the district is making to extending time between requests for funding. So you can say, look, this is what we were thought it might be. Here's any way we were creatively able to extend the time as long as possible. And I think that that's really kind of what the community is asking for. And I think that that's what builds trust. And I think I will compliment Mr. Espy. I've been more involved with school finance over the last decade than I ever thought I would be. And I think that evening was one of the most successful evenings as far as communicating a complex topic in a digestible way for the community. So I really appreciated that and seeing how everyone responded that evening. And I think as far as the ongoing, I will say, this is from my interactions with the district, I'm glad to know that I think all three of these things are happening. Right? And so that's the first positive. And then so I think as far as continuing the ongoing relationship and trust building with the community is making this visible, saying, look, these are our victories. These are where we're winning. These are where we're fighting. And we're doing what we can to simultaneously build a great district and to make it as efficient for the community as possible. And so with that, I appreciate his efforts and don't know if there's any questions before I finish.
Thank you for all your time you've put in. You've attended a lot and done a lot of behind the scenes stuff and learning about the numbers and all the fun school stuff.
Yes.
Thanks for staying for an hour and 47 minutes.
I was shocked that everyone didn't stay to wait to hear from me. I thought there would be better, but
I feel like that every meeting.
You have to hype them in the beginning. And
Yeah.
They all went home and turned on their computers so they could
Okay.
catch it.
Absolutely.
I'm sure your wife's watching at home too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to chip in that I've been doing it only for about 5 years, and the amount of ground that we've covered since we started is incredible. And and your ongoing participation in that has been a big part of it. So I appreciate your help with gathering data, interpreting data, kind of giving us an idea of what the community is looking for. It's been really great. And I mean, to look at this list versus where we were 5 years ago,
Yeah.
it's night and day.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would say thanks to Dr. Goldie for going through all that and being a part of it. I appreciate it very, very much. And I think kudos to Mr. Espy. I think it's pretty easy to see he was a teacher and he's able to break a very difficult subject down into digestible form. So he did a great job and he was the hardest working man in show business that evening. So, but thank you.
He was even understandable the second time he did it, which
Yep.
sometimes gets more difficult. So well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so moving on to board resolutions. 5.1, we have a motion to set our organizational meeting for January 7th at 6 p.m. and the budget meeting that would happen before that at 5:30. Board members are not required to attend the budget hearing. That's for the public, right, to come and hear if they would desire to do so at 5:30. Our meeting would begin at 6. This is part of our state requirements to have our organizational meeting at the very beginning of the year. And we'll, like I said, in December, talk a little bit more at our work session about who is interested in serving in various roles for this next year. But we need to get this meeting set specifically as our organizational meeting. So do we have a motion to adopt this resolution to set the meeting for January 7th at 6 p.m.
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Dr. Swetchtown?
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn?
Yes.
Reverend Eilert?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarenick?
Yes.
Mrs. Mangan?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, then another piece of this is to appoint a president pro tem for the 25 organizational board meeting. And this is the person that will run the meeting at the beginning while we handle the nominations for president and vice president. And then those folks can take over for the remainder of the meeting. Is there someone who is
I think you did a
eager
great
and
job
willing
last
to
year.
serve as President Pro Tem for the.
I would be happy to, I would accept the nomination if so nominated.
Excellent. Is there a second for the nomination of?
You mean to fight him?
Yeah.
A second.
All right. Can we have a roll call to appoint Dr. Schwetchnow as the President Pro Tem for our January organizational meeting?
So we need to actually have a motion.
Yeah,
For the,
I just asked him, so we need to,
All
I
right.
need to motion. I will be the first motion. And
I can second.
Yeah.
Great. And a roll call, please.
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Mrs. Jarenick,
Yes.
Mrs. Mangan,
Yes.
Dr. Swetchenow.
Yes.
Just got so excited. Jumped right to it.
All right. Moving on then to our Assistant Superintendent for Human Resource other areas. I thought Garth left for a second there. He ran.
Checking on his chart.
Gone. Good evening, everybody.
Evening.
It's good to see you all. First, I just want to make sure, sitting here tonight, watching our high school students present with Tigers Inc. and the Green Team and their project, listening to our student reps and their reports for our building, then highlighting our teachers, our staff that were up here able to present for the middle school, and then a fellow administrator presenting on the work that he does. This is a really great place, and I am proud to work here. So wanted to say that. Moving on, I'm going to be brief tonight. That's enough, Rich. I also want to thank, we have two representatives from the LEA that are here today. We have bookends. We have Emily here from LECC and Kristen from the high school is behind me on my left here. So thank you guys for being here tonight. The regular report, the notes section is there. There are a couple of things I wanted to point out with some health issues with some folks. So just make sure to keep them on your mind. And we also have a resignation of a bus driver, which is always a bummer. Because we've been working really hard to keep adding to that group. So the FTE chart will show a reduction in the transportation group. And then there was a late entry as well. That is number B4, and that's a stipend for a student teacher mentor. So I am able to field any questions you have about that particular report.
Questions for Mr. Collier? All right, then we're ready for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Mrs. Jarenick,
Yes.
Mrs. Mangan.
Yes.
Dr. Swetchenow.
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Thank you for your report. And then I believe you've got the next item as well.
Yes, yeah, 6.2 is just we liked for the board to make sure that they understand. Of course, we had some representatives talking tonight about some overnight trips. There are 3 different pieces here, just making sure to bring those to your attention. The diving team attending up in Ohio and Canton, that's coming up at the end of December. The 5th grade Camp Kern trip, of course, is starting tomorrow. So the weather is going to be a little dicey. It's supposed to get down to 32, just in time for Camp Kern, which is fun. And then our high school competitive cheer group, they have qualified for nationals, and that is a trip to Orlando, Florida, and that is in February. So just making sure to bring those to your attention so you guys are aware that where we have students going and where we have staff attending. So
Just a quick question. Did
Yeah.
we already approve the marching band?
we did.
Okay, I couldn't
Yeah,
remember.
we
Okay.
actually, that came up in our
Okay.
meeting this morning, making sure that we
Yeah,
did.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. I just
And-
talked to
And
someone.
we
that's
already
going.
did.
Yeah.
That's a good
Okay.
question.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
All right, do we have a motion to approve these 3 overnight trips?
So moved. Second?
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Jarenick,
Yes.
Mrs. Mangan.
Yes.
Dr. Swetchenow.
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert.
Yes.
And as always, the FTE chart is attached in board docs if anybody would like to take a look. Have a great night.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Collier. I do believe that is a record for you. Well done. All right, moving on to our treasurer reports, 7.1.
Yes, thank you. So I'll go ahead and start with the finance report, outlining October. We're 33.3% through fiscal year 25. Our expenditures and revenues are currently showing a positive cash impact of 1.6 to forecasted expenditures. Keeping in mind that number is going to change next month because after hopefully you approve the forecast that I present to you, that will be the new benchmark that we're looking at. When we're looking at expenditures, 0.05% negative variance to forecasted expenditures. Salaries and benefits are coming in a little bit lower. And then our purchase services expenses are a little bit higher, which is our foundation payments. What happens there is in October, it's when we first start to get our deductions for the current year out of our foundation payments that we get 2 times per month. And so that's what's going on there. When we look at the revenues, 2.1% positive variance, local taxes, final settlement, settlements came in and they're a little bit higher than I had in the forecast. And then state revenue, which is again tied to the updated fiscal year 25 numbers. And then all of the revenue, the sinking fund that we discussed a few months ago, still showing up with that variance. That variance will go away again as the forecast is updated. When we look at the interest income, $72,387.80. Fiscal year to date, $292,045.78. When we look at our October investment analysis, we're continuing to work the plan that we've talked about with utilizing treasury and commercial paper. So we really feel like in this month, the month that we're currently in, we're going to start to see that be advantageous to us between the STAR interest rate and what we're getting from commercial paper. Ongoing projects, we are finalized with getting all departments on electronic timesheets. I just want to recognize everyone's hard work for making that happen. It's really great to kind of get away from paper and get with the 21st century. We're also continuing to work on our standard operating procedures. They change every day. I attended a Hamilton County Treasurers meeting a couple weeks ago and learned of some new auditor requirements. We kind of learn of auditor requirements when another district learns of the auditor requirement, sometimes in not such a great way. This was a minor thing, but something that we were able to kind of push out with the standard operating procedures. We have gotten our first grant with our grant writer submitted. It's a $40,000 tech grant. We have several more that we're looking at. And I actually had a meeting today, so we're constantly working with our grant writers to identify needs in the district and write grants to meet those. So again, going back to what Dr. Goldie said, was one of the pillars and tenets that we got back from the CAT was looking at additional funding and outside funding. We are nearing completion of the financial and the gap audit, which is great. So we should have that back soon. Been working with Mr. Bryant on potential energy savings projects. We had a late meeting yesterday where we got to learn a little bit, and we're looking at some potential projects that we can do throughout the district to help look forward, because we're getting a really great rate right now on our energy rates, but we know that that's probably going to come to roost at some point. And so we're trying to offset any kind of increases with potential savings. So appreciate his leadership in business, along with Mr. Collier as well. I have been started to attending building meetings to brief the staff on our finances. We've been doing a lot of work on the community and families with newsletters. Now we're starting to do that at the building level. I think we have bookend on Friday, a really early meeting and a later meeting. So sorry, LMS, they get me at the very end of the day, right before a weekend. So it'll be an even much more sweeter weekend when you get to finish my presentation. And then again, looking at the district finance communications, those are ongoing things that we're working on as well. So any questions on that report?
No, I just appreciate the communication cascading kind of every which way, and talk a lot about no surprises, and you're leading the way on that to make sure there aren't any surprises. So just very thankful.
Thank you. I just want to recognize, yeah, I really appreciate that comment. I want to recognize, and I should have started this way, a lot of stuff going on tonight in my world. I want to recognize the treasurer's office team for how much, how hard they're working, but also going to an all admin meeting and saying, hey, I want to get in front of your staff. And then by the end of the day, we had it all scheduled. So, kudos to the principals for kind of making that a priority and coming up with some days for me to get there and speak with the staff. So appreciate all that.
Excellent. Any other questions on the treasurer's report? We have a motion to accept the financial reports for October 24th.
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Mangan,
Yes.
Dr. Swetchenow,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Mrs. Jernick.
Yes.
Thank you. Then 7.2 donations. We got a number of donations to recognize tonight.
Yes, we want to recognize all of our donors here. Again, we see Kevin and Cecilia Watts for Feed the Kids Fund, so definitely appreciative of them, as well as Art Jarvis. A lot of these others are ones that we're catching up on for our new accounts that we've set up for our athletics. So each sport essentially has their own fundraising account now, and so we're catching up to make sure that we recognize these as donations.
That continues on to the next page too. There are a couple more.
Yes.
At the top of that page. We can thank Mr. Broadwater in person for the Broadwater family donation of pavers. Thank you for that.
Yeah, this is a long list, so it's great
Yeah,
to see.
It is, yes.
All right, do we have a motion to accept these donations?
Second. Lynn's first.
Roll call, please.
Dr. Swetchenow,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Mrs. Jernick,
Yes.
Mrs. Mangan.
Yes.
Thank you. Then moving on to the Cooperative School Bus Purchasing Program Resolution.
Yes, so this allows us through the EPC to do cooperative purchasing, but also a bid process that they conduct. So this just allows us to get into that purchasing power. It's essentially like going to Costco to buy a school bus, if you want to think of it that way, with that purchasing power that you have of buying in bulk, even though we're only looking at buying 2 buses.
This is our membership to Costco resolution, and then
Yes.
the next one will be the
That
purchase.
costs $0. The membership costs $0.
What a bargain.
Yes.
Do we have a motion for this, to approve this resolution?
So moved.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Mrs. Jernick,
Yes.
Mrs. Mangan,
Yes.
Dr. Swetchenow.
Yes.
All right, now to our Costco purchases, the acceptance of bids for the EPC School Bus Purchasing Program.
Yes, so this is actually accepting the bid so we can purchase 2 buses. This is part of the ongoing PI and capital planning that we're doing. We have weekly meetings on Friday where we go over capital needs and planning. And through bringing in Mr. Osi a couple weeks ago, we were able to kind of dial in our busing needs, and we settled on 2 buses, and these would be the 2 buses that we would be purchasing.
They're both the specialized buses.
Yes.
All right, any questions about this recommendation, acceptance of these bids?
I don't have any real concerns, but just as a review, it's a 48 passenger special needs school bus. What's the usage for this? This allows special needs students to be transported with other students. This is specific. We don't have that many special needs transport needs at once, do we?
No, but what we do have is we have different routes that are happening throughout the district. So we have to have those buses that are specialized throughout the district at the same time. So, yeah. And these were specific needs that again, Greg kind of looked at. We were looking at the actual mileage of all the buses, looking at which buses to potentially retire as they start to get higher in mileage, because there starts to be a law of diminishing returns with buses where you're constantly in the state of upkeep and maintenance.
So this is partially improving our ability to transport students and partially upgrading our fleet.
Yes.
Yeah, if you recall, we do not transport in vans.
Right.
So yeah, this helps us kind of what you're saying about that.
Mr. Bryan, did you have an additional point?
All right, do we have a motion to approve the bus bid as presented for 2 buses for $134,432?
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Mrs. Jarnick,
Yes.
Mrs. Mangan,
Yes.
Dr. Swetchnow.
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Thank you. Kudos to our busing department for the work they did last week, working around a gas main break and getting our kids home in a timely fashion quickly. Well done. All right, 7.5, payment in lieu of transportation.
We have one more student, so we've been talking about this for the past couple meetings, one more, so.
We have a motion to approve the payment in lieu of transportation as presented.
So moved.
Does it say pilot on it because the reasons listed are new?
No, pilot is payment in lieu of transportation. Yeah, it's okay.
I know we had talked about making changes.
It's okay. I didn't know what PBIS was, so.
So I have.
second.
Okay. Got it.
All right, do we have a motion?
We did. Yeah. Eric.
Okay.
Elaine. Yeah.
Then roll call, please.
Mrs. Jarnick,
Yes.
Mrs. Mangan.
Yes.
Dr. Swetchnow.
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Reverend Eilert.
Thank you. Yes, sorry, thank you.
say
Yes, thank you. It's getting late. All right. 7.6, authorization to file a modified tax budget for fiscal years 25 and 26.
So moved. Second.
Any questions?
This is our standard every year, right?
Yep, just converting the 5-year forecast from a fiscal year to a calendar year.
Can we roll call then, please?
Mrs. Mangan.
Yes.
Dr. Swetchnow.
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Reverend Eilert.
Yes.
Mrs. Jarnick.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Then 7.7, additional classroom at LECC.
Yes, so a couple, I would say about 6 weeks ago, we met with the LECC staff with Matt Patterson, as well as the administrative team here, board office team, and kind of talked to them about their additional needs. One of them was an additional pre-K classroom. So I wanted to kind of go through the analysis that we have, some analysis that I've put together as well, just so you kind of know where we're coming from and maybe get some discussion points here. So when we look at specifically how preschool works, there's Ohio law, but then there's also Step Up to Quality. You know, my wife is also a school administrator who administrated a preschool that, you know, had Step Up to Quality. So constantly hearing about all the stringent and just high requirements that this brings. And it's pretty awesome to have LECC be a gold level school when it comes to Step Up to Quality. And so these are just kind of the background that we're looking at with what we're looking at from a preschool program at LECC. When we look at surrounding area preschool tuition costs for 24-25, you can see that, you know, we're definitely below some of our neighboring peers. And so what we wanted to do was just kind of benchmark this to see if it was appropriate to maybe make some changes with our tuition. And as we do that, we are going to be making a recommendation to change that and also to set into a process of a 2% increase that we would do every year just to keep up with costs as they continue to go up from year to year. So again, their specific ask was for an additional general education room. And so what I tried to do here was take some of their points and just kind of synthesize it into one slide, but it expands essentially the continuum of the service that is required. But it also allows for 8 more students with disabilities to be able to attend LECC. So this, you know, there's overwhelming numbers and research that shows that early intervention has an impact to the better for the student, but also from a financial standpoint, it's going to have, again, I hate using the word ROI and return on investment when we're talking about people, especially the development of people. but that is specifically what this is. We're able to early, have early intervention with these students. And so that would be 8 more students that would be able to attend LECC. We also would be able to expand the openings for 28 additional students to attend that would be tuition paying, that would help offset the costs. When you look at reducing the travel time for itinerant services, so we have families that are either bringing their students to have itinerant services at the building, or we have our employees that are driving to those staff members. So in my financial analysis, it's really hard from year to year for me to be able to pinpoint what that kind of savings would be. So I left that out to just be transparent with this specific study. But I do think that we're going to see some maybe not significant savings, but there's going to be definitely some savings to help offset this. And again, having the 28 additional tuition paying students allows for an offset of cost to the district. When we look at just the community interest, I can tell you from being a parent of a student that attends the preschool, I hear all the time that people wish that they, that if they're not in the preschool, they're not having their students served, that they want to be. And it's a common theme that I hear throughout the community. I'm sure others have heard the same thing. I think these numbers here that we see on the far right support that. So in 23 and 24, we had 45 students on the wait list, 24, 25, 63 on the wait list. So clearly enough to be able to support an additional 28 tuition paying students. So some financial analysis that I did here is looking at the current tuition at $2,880. If we were to go to $3,200, which would still keep us, we would be maybe in the top 40% of proposed tuition, but still competitive with our neighbors and actually below our neighbors. This would allow us to then do a 2% increase as I spoke about before in 26, 27. If we ignore the next section where it talks about classroom setup costs and curriculum, because we currently have funding sources that we could divert to pay for those. So the permanent improvement fund could pay for the $25,000 setup cost of the classroom. The curriculum would be covered through our CCIP grant funding. And then when we look at the next section, the major cost is going to be an additional teacher and an aide. Obviously, that would affect the FTEs. FTEs would go up, but we would be serving more students as well. So that additional cost is a little bit more than $105,000. But then when you look at the current tuition, plus the additional 28 students, plus the increase, we're talking about a potential cost to the general fund of $6,910. And so the idea is that with the tuition increasing year over year, and that's not to say that there might not need to be more than 2% from a year to year, we feel like we would be able to continue to be within, relatively close to that budget line. And again, keeping in mind here, the travel costs are not broken in there, so we could essentially be close to a net zero. So happy to get some feedback from the board, hear your, maybe points that you might have questions on.
You've heard feedback from me before on the ability of us to provide services in order to help the children of our community that aren't necessarily available in other communities, which I really appreciate. You've obviously done a great financial analysis showing that the net cost of that to us will be relatively low. The one thing I would just caution is, you're counting on 28 additional full student tuition payments. And I know at least with some of the programs that we've waived tuition or lessened tuition with free and reduced lunch populations. We don't do that with the preschool.
We do not do that with the preschool. They're not actually in a position that, like, the family could qualify for free and reduced lunch, but that student necessarily wouldn't, because it's an additional service that we're offering.
And I think that you were very conservative in not reducing the travel costs, but because we are already responsible for, if not educating those children in one of our buildings, providing the services that they require.
Yes.
Are the families chosen through like a lottery system?
Yes.
All right, thank you for that information. We don't have any.
No action. We just wanted to gauge your feedback, because this is something that we would like to move forward with. The action would be, through Mr. Collier bringing an additional, 2 staff members to be able to serve this.
Yeah, I really appreciate the thorough analysis. So it's good.
Just to
Absolutely.
jump in, I want to say thanks to John for doing that, as well as the staff at LECC, Mr. Patterson, and the rest of the staff that are the ones who brought it to us to begin with. So I appreciate them bringing on extra work for themselves because they see the need for the community. So kudos to LECC.
Excellent. All right, 7.8, the resolution to appoint Great Oaks representative for the remainder of the 23-26 term. And there's a resolution that's there before you, included in the agenda document. Any questions about the resolution as presented? All right, and Ms. Jernick still ready and willing to serve in this role? All right, and do we have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Thank you. A roll call, please.
Dr. Swetchino,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Mrs. Jernick,
Yes.
Mrs. Megan.
Yes.
Thank you. And thanks again to Mrs. Jernick for being willing to step into that role, and for Dr. Lorenz for all of her years of service previously. Big shoes to fill. Big shoes. to fill. All right. 7.9 is disposal of obsolete items.
Yes, so these were some items that were brought to our attention that LMS wanted to dispose of. They're items that cannot be used anymore. Probably just collecting dust in a closet somewhere that we would like to be able to dispose of. But because of the nature of what they are, we wanted to bring it to the board to let you know that we're disposing of them.
We have a motion to approve the disposal of these obsolete items.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Mrs. Jernick,
Yes.
Mrs. Mangan, Dr. Swetchino.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, drum roll, 5-year forecast. We've all been waiting.
I know.
for anticipation. Mhm.
Yeah.
How many people waited around to hear?
I know. So
Sorry.
Lynn's already heard a lot of this.
she has,
Finance
yes.
meeting. Jump in.
So I do want to thank you again for your attention to this. I'm going to go over the first couple slides that I put in every one of the forecasts, just to let you know that this is required. I do think it's a really good process to go through. I can tell you that while I have to present this twice a year, I'm working on it every day. And so I just want the community to know that. And we're looking only at the general fund. Again, general fund is the 001 fund. It's the largest fund that we have. It's the most malleable, but it's definitely the one that we're focusing on tonight. When you look at the forecast, the left side that I've outlined in red is going to be 3 years of actual. The right side is going to be 5 years projected. Obviously, this one I'm going to have much more estimates that are going to have to happen for fiscal year 25. Once we get to May, I'll have only a few months. So they typically get a little bit more dialed in as we go. I wanted to also, kind of paint this picture because this is really important. We've talked about this in the school funding committee. We're a guarantee district. And if you look at the numbers on top, the 3.3 million, the 4.8 million, getting up to 7.3 and 7.2 million, those are the funds that we would stand to lose if the guarantee went away. So it's really, really important that, we continue to get the guarantee, and that's definitely something that our school funding committee has advocated for. When we get into the summary, it really comes down to this, and you're going to see this slide later, but the blue is showing our revenue, the gold is showing our expenses, and then the darker blue line is our cash balance over time. So as the expenditures start to take over the revenue, you start to see the cash balance fall. It's important to note that when you look in 24 and 25 in the blue sections, that's going to be the phase in of the levy that was passed in May of 2023, and then it starts to level out. When we look at just the abbreviated forecast, you see that this year, fiscal year 25, we're projected to have a $3.2 million surplus. This is because typically when you pass a levy, you have a surplus for a couple years, and then you start to dwindle it down over time. You start to see it here in fiscal year 26, where that'll be the first year that we project to be in deficit spending. And really, that cash balance is important, or that deficit spending is important, but the percentage by which the expenditures overtake the revenue is what the state looks at in their metrics for looking at the fiscal stressors that they use with caution, warning, and emergency. This is another way of looking at it as well. You'll see again that the expenditures start to overtake the revenue line, and then you'll notice that revenue is expected to change 1.57% average per year versus what had happened in 2020 to 2024 at 2.88%, and then expenditures at 4.7% versus 1.01% that we had in 2020 to 2024. I'm going to get into some factors as to why those numbers are a little bit skewed, but definitely when you look at that, it's concerning to see that the revenue's coming in lower than it historically has, and the expenditures are coming in higher than they had before. But again, there's some factors that I want to discuss a little bit later with you. Some of them right here, when you look at the revenues, flat revenues due to House Bill 920, essentially only getting the increase due to the inside millage. But also what happened with that is when the reassessment occurred, our local capacity to raise money locally went up, which actually affects our categorical spending, like DPIA, which is economic disadvantage, our success and wellness funds, our special ed funds, and our preschool special ed funds. So just things to keep in mind. There's also a lot of uncertainty around interest rates right now, which makes it hard to forecast those. So I've been very conservative on those revenues. We look at the expenditures benefit increases showing a 6.41% versus the 0.64%. Again, I'm going to get into those specifics and why that occurs. Cost, I do want to bring up something that I briefed the board last month, which was we went through a deep dive review of our benefits. And what we found is that we're 20% lower than our peers in cost. And also the richness of our plan is very near our peers. So we're not paying less and getting a whole lot less. We're paying less and getting around the same. So that's really good for our employees. But it's important to note that we're doing really well there. We're actually doing better than several of our peers. And so when we look at that 6.41%, could definitely be a lot more alarming if we were not doing so well. Our staff and step increases are about, yes.
I apologize. Can you comment on why our expenditures for benefits were so low in the previous time period?
Yeah, I'm going to get to that if you'll bear with me for just one. Yeah, I will. I'm going to really break that down in a second. So staff step and percentage increases, looking at 4.51% versus the trend of 1.32%. Again, I'm going to get into that as well. And then you look at supplies and purchase services. These are at 3.12 and 3.28% respectively. These are numbers that I would expect to see year over year in those areas. So nothing, no cause for alarm in supplies and purchase services. Those are typically your increases you see in contracts. So if you look at this is just salaries, and looking at 21, 22, and 23, lots of variances in percentages. That's the year over year percentage change. So we had a reduction of staffing that occurred in 2021 and also 2020. We also had COVID-19. So we had a shutdown for a period of time, which didn't affect the salary pay for employees, but what it affected is their ability to have overtime and additional items that they might have otherwise done where we would have spent those funds and also had to spend benefits by way of retirement. So a lot of up and down here. You'll notice that very similar things happen with benefits, except when we go to 24 to 25, we actually received a lower percentage increase in our benefits going into this year than the previous treasurer had actually budgeted for. However, we do know that if you look over the past several years, there was as much as a 12% increase from between 2016 and 2023. So we're also being very, very conservative when it comes to that to make sure we're accounting and we're not surprised. There was actually a neighboring district in 2019 that received a 25% increase in benefits, health benefits. I don't think that will ever happen here with our consortium, but it's definitely something that I'm monitoring. When you look at salary and benefit percentage change over time, if we go back and start looking at 2016 as the base year and come forward to 2023, you can see that we were seeing 4.7, 6.6, 5.1. Then in 2020, 2.9. Again, that was the shutdown year where we, things shut down in March. And then in 2021, after a failed levy, there was a lot of reduction that occurred in salaries. And then you start to see that change come back up because you're not going to continue. You wouldn't be able to cut the same amount from 21 to 22. So you're going to see an increase, and then it gets back to that leveling out that you see in 2023. So when we look at these numbers, if we pull out 2020 and 2021 in both personnel services, which are salaries, and benefits, we're seeing 5.13% year-over-year change and 4.49% year-over change in benefits. So if that kind of makes sense, I really feel like 2020 and 2021 are anomalous. And so it really doesn't do us a whole lot of good to utilize those years in our percentage change over time. Any questions on that? Dr. Swetchenow, did I answer your question?
You perfectly answered my question. I think it's a little bit dangerous to label 2021 as anomalous because what happens if your salary and benefits continue to increase at paces that outpace our community's desire to pay for them. That's why you see 2021.
Absolutely. And that again goes back to that chart of our enrollment and our staffing and monitoring that. And that's something that I'm committed to doing. I know that that's something that the rest of the administrators here are committed to doing as well.
And the flip side too is, our employer benefits rate over time, even when you average, I think you said was 5%, a little bit less than that for benefits. If you include the 12.8% in 2019, averaged out, taking out 20 and 21, 6.4% is a generous allowance. And quite frankly, we'll have conversations in finance over time, but we may have to pare back benefits if we're continuing to grow at that rate.
For sure. And my hope is that we're going to continue to come in under the projections. That's always what we're hoping for, but we also want to be ready in case we do see an increase. And these numbers are things that I'm talking about with my peers. I'm talking about with other treasurers that are part of our consortium. We're working together. We're not just all working, in silos. So something to keep in mind as well. And I forgot that I did that. So that's always fun when you go to click to the next slide. But again, 2020 and 2021 reductions are affecting that trend. Correct. Exactly. Absolutely. And again, you just have to remember when you're looking at this is percentage change. So this is not like growth from year to year. You're looking at the percentage change. Something that I have to remind myself about as well when I see those, numbers that are quite up and down. Any other questions? All right, getting into revenues. When we look at our revenues, We have local taxes, obviously, that are making up the green section. The lion's share. The state sources are 29%. And then our all other revenue, which is going to be our interest. Sometimes we have like our, for instance, our Medicaid reimbursements we get. Those are all reimbursements on prior years. They go into all other revenue. When we look at specifically into that state sources, what we are doing from a district standpoint is we're advocating for additional funding. We're doing that through trying to essentially ask for the state share minimum to be increased. Currently, we're at the state share minimum, the basement level, we're at 10%. If it went to 15%, we would have an additional $500,000 a year. If it went to 20%, it would be an additional $1 million a year. So those are things that we're working on from a district level to influence that. And again, going back to what Dr. Goldie said, that was another one of those points of trying to make sure that we're trying to affect the way that the state funds our districts. This was something that I included in the CAT meeting, but it just shows the state average breakdown on the right versus our breakdown on the left, where you can see the difference of what the state is showing from a local standpoint and a state standpoint, where for us, our local share is much larger, which puts the burden on our taxpayers. When we look at revenues over time, again, I had alluded to this before, but this is where you start to see the levy phase in. And you'll notice that there's a slight drop right here. That's because we have one-time revenues. The sinking fund that I talked about, there was also a real estate evaluation assessment that was given back to us from the county auditor. Those are monies that essentially we get deducted fees every single time we get property taxes. And the Hamilton County Auditor has been committed to returning any unused funds that aren't needed for the process of evaluating property. So that's where we see that slight drop off. When we look at property tax collection rates, I look at what we've been seeing. We saw in 2023, 99.6. In 2024, seeing 98.8. And so I've essentially run that collection rate forward. When we get specifically into expenditures, you've heard us say before, we're a people business. 83% of our costs are in personnel costs. We can actually say, I ran this out, 6.2% of our purchase services are also for people. So when you add that together, you're talking about essentially almost 90% are people. And the reason I bring this up is we're always going to be fiscally responsible. We're always going to try to find ways to cut costs. But when you're running into any kind of a budget deficit or deficit spending, I always kind of make it's kind of in jest, but you can't cut your way out with cutting Post-it notes, because supplies make up such a small piece of what we're doing from a total budget. When we look at our expenditures over time, again, we see this swoosh here happen because of the reduction that happened with staff. Also, there's some ESSER funds that were essentially diverted here that would have otherwise impacted the general fund. And then again, I bring back the factors that are impacting the expenditures at the bottom that I spoke about earlier. So you can see how these expenditure rates and projections are getting to the total expenditure projections that I'm bringing up. Again, to simplify everything I just said, it's really about revenues and expenditures and what the effect is on the cash balance. So I wanted to bring this slide back to kind of drive that point home. Obviously, when you look at where we are right now, around the $20 million range, and then looking out in 2029 at 5.1 is concerning. When we look at days cash on hand, this is something that I look at. It was in the previous forecast. I was able to work with our analytics company to make this look a little bit nicer than the iterations you've seen before. But you can see that when we get out into fiscal year 28 and 29, we're below 90 days cash, and that was part of the cash balance policy that I brought to the board as a measure of financial health. And so this is where, because I'm bringing you this forecast that has 2 years that are below 90, we're going to have to start having some discussions on, you know, what are we doing as a district to address that. I also wanted to, you know, just say for sake of transparency, show you the difference. If you look in the green, that was the forecast that I filed in May. The orange is showing this forecast. And so some things that have changed, obviously things change, and things have changed since May. I wanted to highlight what those factors that are impacting the variances. The sinking fund interest that we talked about in fiscal year 25, the return of the Hamilton County auditor funds in fiscal year 25, both of those being one time, and then the cost saving measures that we're continuing to go through at the district level. Again, I'll say this again, this is a special place because typically you have people always asking for more and more and more and more, and they want to increase it. And obviously people do want more and more, but we're conditioned here in this district to try to stretch dollars at the same rate without increasing costs, specifically in our contracts. And I just want to kind of give the entire administrative team and the entire district as a whole kind of pat on the back for that approach. It's very refreshing sitting in my chair. When we look at the forecast and the fiscal stressors, when you get into that yellow area right in here, that's where you start to see issues with fiscal warning, caution, warning, and then the dark red is emergency. So as we look and you kind of draw the conclusion from the cash balances that I was showing earlier, it's the same areas, 27, 28, 29, where we start to cross into those kind of fiscal stressors that just wanted to bring to the board's attention. I wanted to end with our key metrics because these are things that we've worked really, really hard at identifying. There are things that we've been able to communicate to now. Hopefully by the end of January, it'll be all the people on our spectrum of community engagement. Again, when we look at being a top 18 district with 5 stars in every category, we're essentially doing that at the second lowest expenditures per pupil in that subcategory. We're also doing it with the most students served by teacher per teacher, which I think is a really interesting, and just kudos to, as I told the LPS and LES staff on Friday morning, that's just an awesome number to be able to tout as a district. Again, 62% of districts spend more than us, 97 have more teacher support, 96% of districts have more admin support. Again, bringing this back again, looking as the enrollment fluctuates, we are working to adjust our staffing levels. And again, kudos to Garth and everything that he does, and with his savings chart that he's implemented long before I got here, but I get to punch in the numbers and see that there's a savings every year for the past several years, which is great. And finally, helpful links. So I won't go into what those are, but you can hit that QR code and find out for yourself. It's a surprise. So any questions?
When do we find out from the state when the next biennium budget is approved? Is it before, is it after our next forecast? So is it after May?
It will likely be about 6 p.m. on June 30th.
Okay. So we will not know before our next forecast.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to start to get information, and I'll use the best information that I have available at that time. But from my experience, it happens much after that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really clear summary. I really like the visibility into the days in the cash balance. That's super helpful, just right out front. So all of it's very helpful, but, and the documentation in the 5-year forecast as well, so that, I don't know if anybody's reading that in their spare time, but it's helpful to not, to be able to have this presentation recorded And in parallel with that, the two people shouldn't have, I don't think we should have many questions about the assumptions that were in there.
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing that up. So there's the forecast that's approved, but also the assumptions. They're essentially the explanations or the work. Well, you know, I've got a fourth grader right now. She's having to show her work in math. So it's me showing my work. And so you know, definitely suggest digging into that. I spent a lot of time looking over it and preparing it. But it's definitely important to dig into if you have an analytical mind. And if you don't, you can just look at the numbers and do so however you like.
I think some of the big picture pieces that jump out at me as I look at that again, great job of going through that and breaking it down in ways that I think people can get their heads around. You know, I think one of the things that becomes really clear when you look at the kind of analysis that you just did is the inevitability of levies for us in our funding structure here. You know, the possibility for savings, as you said, and particularly even thinking about the salary component, that's the largest component, and the vast majority of that is bound up in negotiated agreements with our associations that have multi-year factors already baked into them, and have to be reflective of the market. And, you know, we know that their willingness to work with us as they have in the past, and we're really always very appreciative of that. But there are realities there as we continue to see increases. The flat line of revenue in the way that our revenue comes, I thought that was a really helpful pie chart you had comparing us to others in the state as well, and the difference that the greater burden placed on local taxpayers, that was really helpful to see. But then also thinking about, okay, where can we make changes? You know, we're talking at $500,000 a year, or maybe $1 million a year. And when you start to look at that forecast and where that gap goes, to even move the needle on that and the kind of savings we can create internally. So maybe we're talking about a year's change, and kudos again to you. I think you actually have accomplished that in terms of that cash balance and looking at where do we hit the 90-day marker. We essentially pushed that out another year before we crossed that threshold. But it's still a year, you know, and the inevitability comes for us. And so it's just really important, I think, for the community to understand, even when we're doing our absolute best and getting the most that we can in terms of incremental change at the state level to funding there. Unless things changed wholesale somehow at the state, we're going to have to go back for a levy in a couple of years because it's simply structurally the way that the system works. And I think the more clearly we can say that, and I think you've done that very well in this forecast, the more prepared our people can be and more confident they can be that we're doing what we can as a district. So thank you.
I appreciate that. I mean, we're looking at expenditures. We're looking at how do we stretch the dollars? How do we do it? Where can we go and find additional funding? You know, I've identified one grant that's over $2 million. Will we get it? I don't know. We're going to try. I mean, we're going to continue to try to identify additional funding sources. And I think that what I'm going to really commit myself to is making sure everyone knows what we're doing every month. So, you know, it's been said before that educators are some of the worst at saying all the great things that they're doing. So, you know, we're just going to try to tell that story. Like we're, as a district, are doing these things at the best level that we can. But to your point, it's not if, it's when, under this current structure of when we're going to have to ask for additional revenue from the community.
Well, and I'll just double down on that, which is we've heard very clearly from the community, and we've made it very clear in return that we're doing everything we can from the school district standpoint to identify additional funds and take advantage of those. Our baseline is not, oh, we'll just go back to the community and we'll ask them for more money.
Correct.
I just want to thank you for all the time and effort you put into everything and how detailed you are. It is much appreciated.
Thank you very much.
All right, if there are no further questions or comments, then we have a motion to approve the 5-year forecast as presented.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Reverend Eiler,
Yes.
Mrs. Jaranek,
Yes.
Mrs. Mangan,
Yes.
Dr. Swetchnow,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Thank you. I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
Eric.
Thank you. Figure out who made that.
I thought it was you and then Lynn.